I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
Kenobi!
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
Welcome to another episode of the Star Wars Station Communication Podcast. We just got done with another episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 22, Guns for Hire. Last week, I really enjoyed The Mandalorian. It felt like a Saturday morning cartoon episode, but it had good stakes, and it fit well into the Star Wars universe. This episode felt just like a pulp comic book from the 1970s. If you remember the original Star Wars Marvel run in 1979, this is exactly what it felt like. They were going on adventures that seemed straight out of the Droids cartoon. It was like Jackson, the rabbit, the pilot rabbit from those original comic books, would have just shown up at any point. I was surprised he didn't bring his head in there. I don't think that the episode landed for me, but I do think it landed for my co-host. If you've seen the buzz online, a lot of people are using the word fever dream to describe this episode, and I think that was an apt description. But no matter what, you can enjoy Star Wars because there are a lot of things to love from this episode. There are a ton of guest stars, and we're going to talk about just the fact that there are so many guest stars in this episode, so many big-name actors, big-name performers in this. And The Mandalorian is not the only thing we have to talk about on this episode. We've got some very important news because we've got some extremely sad news that we have to talk about, and we've got some fun news running into Celebration. And so we're going to get to all of that here in just a second. But first, it is the Prince of Plazir himself to talk to us about this episode of The Mandalorian, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter, thank you. I'm one of the few who super love this episode. I'm respect all the criticisms that I've seen out there on the internet today. However, I'm a sci-fi nerd. There's a lot of calling backs to fiction from the 50s. I hope you listen to our rapid reactions. You need to subscribe to our fabulous Patreon if that's to hear those, and you'll get a hint of what I'm about to talk about. And we're going to play our rapid reactions for you, so you can get a very simple taste of this right now.
He doesn't seem to take a hint, this guy.
Colin, that was certainly an episode of The Mandalorian. It was very tonally interesting. We got a lot of things that we haven't seen in Star Wars for a really long time. To me, it felt like maybe an episode of the Clone Wars, or maybe even an edition of the 1970s comic book with Jax the Rabbit and the other kind of crazy, campy things that they were doing at Star Wars in the time. But Colin, let's first talk about, it was guest star city. There were so many guest stars in this episode.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it so much. Jack Black, Christopher Lloyd. I'm sure there's so many that I don't even recognize off the top of my head.
Lizzo was in there.
Her?
It was yeah.
I don't know anything about her.
Right. No, yeah, her music's a little beyond your taste. I get it, but she's she did a good job. She's I don't believe this is her first acting gig. I think she's acted in some other things, just a few roles kind of like this, smaller parts. I may be mistaken. I also am not super familiar with her work, but I was immediately Jack Black. I heard his voice and I didn't expect that. And then we knew Christopher Lloyd was going to be in The Mandalorian. We had been waiting for Christopher Lloyd to be in The Mandalorian, and we finally got him. And his part was a little less exaggerated. He felt like one of the more normal people on this planet. He felt like a little less exaggerated, and you would expect Christopher Lloyd, with his facial expressions and his voice and his role that he played in Back to the Future, to have been a more overstated character.
Yeah, once I saw him, it felt like a comedy episode, and it kind of was, I guess, but.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was a goofier tone for sure, and that's kind of like I linked it to those comic books. That's the tone of those early Star Wars comic books, is kind of campy and goofy, and they introduce rabbit characters. Jax the Rabbit is a famous character from that kind of what I would think encapsulates this episode. But it also felt to me like an episode of the Clone Wars that they're exploring as like a mystery. They're needing to figure out what's going on. We keep getting led to other people. And there were good nods to the Mandalorian universe. We get Queel mentioned, how to deal with the Ugnaughts. It was interesting.
Yeah, so this episode is an homage to Isaac Asimov and his books, The Naked Sun, The Caves of Steel, and some other, the Droid series of Asimov's books. The character Elijah Bailey investigates a murder of a robot malfunctioning and killing its owner, or some other stuff going on that people are suspect the robots. And in one of these books, they go to a masterpiece planet called Aurora. That's a totally planned out, fantastical life of where you'd live, and they're investigating what's going on here with the malfunctioning robot. I mean, this is exactly what it is. There's no question. This is an old piece of fiction. It came out in the 50s, I think. Yeah, 1954. Well, so
Den's line in the droid bar, he says, they're programmed not to harm organics, and it immediately made me think of Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics. I don't even think we've ever heard this in Star Wars before, that they're programmed to not hurt organics. I mean, obviously, some droids are programmed to hurt organics because battle droids exist, but
not when a separatist is in charge and has a magic button to turn that off. Right?
Now, that was a really fun part that I liked. A callback to the Clone War, a Count Dooku zealot, gosh, that was cool. That was cool. Getting a Count Dooku name drop in live action Star Wars it's fun. I'm very happy that we got that. Colin, I'd like to ask you about the tonal shift there at the end. That one I felt like whiplashed by that shift in tone towards the end, because the whole episode was goofy and campy, and we've got all these bright colors and these droids, and then we get out there to the Mandalorians and Axe Woves, and we get what the story that I thought the whole episode was going to be. It was a little quick, but it was also a very different tone than what we had seen.
Yeah, it's kind of like the other ones. They put in the lore or what we want to see on either end. It's a bookends, And
yes,
I'm fine with it. They got to advance it some. It's a serial show, but then they got to have a little bit of filler too. I mean, this is the palate cleanser before the meal, right?
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, we've got 2 episodes left, and so we're going to get to see where all of that goes. And now Bo-Katan's back with the Darksaber, so we've got 2 episodes left to really establish some hard and fast conflict, but I'm excited for it. I have every estimation that the next episode is going to be pretty long, if I had to guess.
Yes. Yeah. We're going to have like 2 hour-and-a-half episodes. It's going to be movies back-to-back, I hope.
Yeah. Yep, I think you're right. That wraps it for our rapid reactions, Colin. Let's dig into the meat of this episode. Those were our rapid reactions. Colin, I'm really happy that you enjoyed this episode so much. And that, I have a lower opinion because I think it's going to make for a really good discussion. And I don't think you're in the minority. I also don't know if you're in the majority. It's online. People were talking about this episode in so many different ways. It really seemed like there was a split opinion on this episode right down the middle.
Yeah, the most overt being pacing issues with this whole season, right?
Sure. A lot of people had problems with the way this fit in. Being episode 6 of 8 seemed like a problem to a lot of people because this episode didn't really seem to put us anywhere to get into a penultimate episode or an ultimate episode.
And we're just getting little drips of plot, overarching plot.
Right.
And I think most notably, we don't have a primary antagonist.
Right. And we've had, Whispers of the Empire, and it's clear that that's who it is, but a lot of people are saying that they haven't been set up enough for this.
Let's talk about this for a second. Is this like TikTok? They need this instant gratification. Is this seeping through into what people are thinking of?
No, I actually don't
What's the
think so.
motivation behind? I mean, because you can call me an eternal optimist. That's fine. I love this stuff.
I mean, I love it too. This may have been a episode of The Mandalorian that didn't hit for me, but it's always an awesome day when we get to watch new Star Wars. There's a lot to love in this episode, and there's a lot to love in the season in general. Do I think the season has been less strong than season 1 and 2 so far? Yes. We still have 2 more episodes, though. And I don't know if it's, people's attention spans that are wavering. I think it's more The Mandalorian is no longer the only Star Wars TV show out there. And we got a lot of Andor for how slow it was, how people talked about the pacing. We did get a lot of 3 arcs and then something big happens. And now we're six episodes into The Mandalorian, and people have the opinion that not a whole lot has changed for the character. And so I think that's where that criticism may be coming from. But I think we can dissect that as we talk about the episode, because I think there will be some good points to bring this back up. The first note I want to make about this episode is that it is pulpier than orange juice. It is the pulpiest episode of Star Wars TV that we have had. It's got bright colors, and it's goofy in good ways and in bad ways, in my opinion. And for a lot of people, it's good. It's pulpy in great ways the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like if I imagine this is like if milk had pulp in it.
Oh my goodness.
Imagine just getting a nice glass of milk and it's pulp. That's what it was like for me. You was probably like the nicest, pulpiest orange juice, or maybe you're a no pulp guy.
I like straight, freshly squeezed orange juice. So
you got to get a little pulp in there.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. Yeah, fancy colors, guest stars galore, cameos. I watched a video on the way over here that the voice of the guide the ship in was the same girl who voiced Amidala in the Clone Wars cartoon.
Oh, okay, very cool.
So that's
good.
Uncredited. So that's a cool little Easter egg. I mean, that alone, that was the first thing. First thing I thought of was somebody's cell phone going off.
Right.
For us. But that's exactly encompasses what this episode is. It's not, might be a pejorative. It's filler, but I don't know. But fun. As soon as you hear Jack Black's voice, all these other little things lend to exactly what you just said.
Right. I'm happy to hear you call it fun, because that is definitely what they were going for with this episode, and I think it landed, like I said, for a lot of folks. I want to get into the episode starting out because it starts strong, I think, very strong. We've got Star Wars feel. We've got Quarrens floating through space. I thought the captain sitting there floating in water was a really, really just small, neat little thing. Why would you not do that if you were a water species? And you'll appreciate this as a Star Trek fan. I'm currently watching through The Next Generation for the very first time. You already know this. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast. The interior of the ship and the way that they were all facing the wall and the way that the bridge was a circle and she was standing in the middle reminded me of the way that Klingon vessels look and the way that it was really dark colors and kind of muted. That's what it seemed like to me. And so I thought the whole opening sequence from start to end was really good. Really good way to kick this episode off.
Yeah, and we've never seen a Quarren ship.
Right, yeah.
And I always love aliens in Star Wars. Mon Calamari appearance here. Star-crossed lovers, literally.
So a lot of people don't know this, and I was not aware of this until I took to online, but the Mon Cal at the very beginning is also a guest star. That is the younger brother of Tom Holland, Spider-Man.
Nice.
Yes, I think his name is Henry Holland or Harry Holland. I really need to verify that. But he was the first guest star to appear, and his name is Harry Holland. And that was already kind of pretty surprising that they threw in three huge guest stars, and then a fourth. I mean, his brother's big. I've never heard of Harry Holland until now. Apparently he was in both of the Spider-Mans, but I didn't know that.
Yep,
I didn't know who he played.
Yeah, so this opening sequence is really neat. And then the Mandalorian mercenaries show up and come to separate the prince and his Quarren entanglement.
Right. I was happy that they're having the Mandos use the light cruiser. When Bo-Katan had referenced the cruiser in the first episode of this season, there were a lot of people saying, oh, she's talking about the Gozanti cruiser that they were already using, that we had watched them acquisition. And I was like, that's pretty lame if they weren't able to keep that light cruiser. Now, I don't know how the New Republic let them keep that light cruiser, but I'm very happy that they have garnered this big fleet.
Maybe they just took the guns off of it.
No way. The Mandalorians without their weapons?
The New Republic's supposed to be disarming right now.
Yeah,
They're just going to let them, I guess you got that now. Have a nice day.
If I were the New Republic, I guess I'd have bigger fish to fry, like the pirate nation invading the mid-rim. That must be a bigger problem than these rogue Mandalorians. The Quarren Mon Cal romance was funny. It was good. It was gross, but it was supposed to be gross. Like the scene with the tentacles twirling his chin. That was already This was pulpy, but I was already there for it. I was like, this is great. It's also disgusting. It looks so nasty.
Yeah.
But it was really good. And like I said, the beginning to end, I was of the very first opening sequence before we get the title screen, Guns for Hire. I was in. I was bought in. I was like, this is going to be a great start to this episode.
Right. Yeah, it confirms we actually get to see on screen the mercenaries out there doing mercenary stuff, earning their keep.
Yeah, which I thought was an important little exposition to really see what it was like and to see Axe Woves in charge, because since we don't see him until the end of the episode, we really need to see him at least in the leadership role for a couple seconds.
Yeah, and in which, once again, if you have the captions on, you get to figure out his name early.
Right. And so we move on after the title screen. We get Bo-Katan and Din Djarin flying into a domed city planet. Now we know for sure all trailer scenes are gone. All trailer scenes were finished off in this episode.
On my second rewatch, R5-D4's in the back, too.
Yes, I did notice that, which is, I mean, I think they've done this a couple times. R5 is in the background, and he doesn't do anything in episodes, but he's important into the next episode. He turns his head, okay. And so he's important in the next episode, and so, or the episode after that. So I'll bet R5 is on this ship for a reason, because they'll need him again in a minute.
Yeah, he's the babysitter.
Right, exactly. So they fly in to this planet with dome cities, green grass. Big fake out from the trailer because everyone thinks these are the dome cities of Mandalore. I'm not upset that they're not. It's not like Mandalore is the only planet in the galaxy that's going to have dome cities. Obviously, that fake out was on purpose,
right?
But it's not a big deal that that's not the case.
Yeah, Buckminster Fuller. You can read a lot about domes. It's kind of like a geodesic dome. Go look that up. It's a really fun read. I don't know if these are similar patterns off what he made, but really cool to see dome cities.
Right.
You know, something about harnessing energy or something.
Right.
And this planet is really cool. This is they have a hyperloop. Or am I jumping ahead?
No, we can talk all about the planet, because I want to jump ahead a little bit and just say, because they have the domed cities, and because you're listening to this and you know that the mission succeeded and these people are basically indebted to these Mandalorians, I wouldn't be surprised if they turn up sometime in season 4 or 5 in helping the Mandalorians rebuild Mandalore.
Yeah, and we see the mercenary fleet here: the cruiser, 2 Gozantis, and several
Comrade class
fighters.
Which is, I mean, that's a big fleet. That's a larger fleet than we've seen on screen, I think, maybe since Revenge of the Sith. No, obviously since The Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
But a huge fleet nonetheless.
Yep. So our friendly Mando that we so love, Bo-Katan and Din Djarin are flying in. And what happens? The cell phone rings.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to approach the Mandalorians. They are pulled in by essentially a tractor beam.
They even looked around like it was.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
And then, welcome to Plazir, the only direct democracy in the Outer Rim. There are thousands of planets in the Outer Rim. So this is... They're using the word direct, and so I want to point out this is certainly not the only democracy in the Outer Rim. This is the only direct democracy in the Outer Rim, and they make a lot of allusions to this, and they talk a lot about they just show a lot of what the results of this being a direct democracy are on this society throughout the episode.
And I think so it's a highly technologically advanced. It's very prosperous, and this might be some proselytizing that democracy is very good for people.
Yes.
You know, it's not there's not tyrants leading this place. It's not some Moff being a butthead.
Right.
It's not a pirate just wrecking everything. It's not even the New Republic, right?
Right. It's 2 elected benevolent leaders.
Right.
That are on this independent world. But I will say, and we'll get into this in a little while, that there does seem to be some commentary on the direct democracy part, and how there's a couple lines where it shows how this may be an issue for them, and how this society may be being taken advantage of. I thought they get on the Hyperloop, they see the droids.
So, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
They get on the Hyperloop, they see the droids. This show is already screaming prequel vibes at me. Like, it's bright colors, it's got affluent people, it's got all this technology, it's sleek, it feels like Coruscant during the prequels, and it specifically feels like Attack of the Clones. And I'm going to use this as an example to show how maybe that's why it didn't resonate with me as much, because I am not as big a fan of Attack of the Clones as I am of some of the other films, and you love Attack of the Clones.
That's right.
And so I think that part of this might have been that it felt very Attack of the Clones to me, as well as the entire episode felt like the Coruscant bar scene to me.
Yes.
The colors and the way it looks and the, being at the nighttime parts of the planet were certainly that way. And so that all, Attack of the Clones really resonated with me. They make multiple callbacks to Attack of the Clones throughout the episode anyway.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot about it. And let me just note right fast on this Hyperloop thing. This is a fantastical idea. It's not just science fiction. These are actual things that humans today want to create.
Yeah, it's an Elon Musk thing, right? Yeah.
That's right. And it's improbable because it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of bureaucracy today. And so somehow this society has cut through that, and it works. And it's a very fast public transportation system that is environmentally friendly. It works off of like vacuum stuff.
Right.
And so I think that's the writers demonstrating, hey, look how cool this is.
Right. Not all other Star Wars planets. I mean, some obviously have them, but we haven't seen Star Wars planets on screen with hyperloops. Like they're showing that even this society for Star Wars has like technological advancement or is flourishing more than other parts of the galaxy. I was interested. I put in my notes that they used the term hyperloop. I was like, that's interesting because I thought they would use a different term since that is the real world term for the machine.
Right.
But anyway, so they hyperloop into the city. They have to go meet the monarchs. Well, the elected monarchs of the society of Plazir 15 is the name of the planet. So they go in.
And these are our first two guest stars. You can hear it immediately.
Well, not our first two. Don't forget, Tom Holland's little brother.
Some of the most, okay, these are our first most prominent.
Right, the ones that you would recognize. And
guest stars.
Big folks. And so you see coming in that they have the first thing that you notice when the door opens, the first line spoken, I immediately knew who it was. I did not have to see his face. You're like, I'm 5 a.m, sitting in front of my TV, little bleary-eyed, and I straight up Leonardo DiCaprio me, point at my TV and audibly say, and hope I didn't wake my wife up, Jack Black. Yep. And it's Jack Black and Lizzo right there delivering lines to a table full of the most colorful aliens that we've seen in, years.
Enticing our heroes to, what did he call it? Succulents?
Secretions.
There's an alien. It's a slurm style thing.
Right. Yeah. And they're all sucking out of tubes. It's a very odd, it's like a Canto Bight, Maz Kanata's castle, Jabba the Hutt eating frogs kind of scene, but it's way more affluent. They're all very wealthy.
Very wealthy, very opulent, very brightly lit, contrast to what most of Star Wars that we see, right?
Right, exactly. And Star Wars uses these lights and the shots with lights like this to really show affluent things and affluent places have bright lights. Tatooine and Underworld and scummy places use dark, low lights, and that's always how it's been since George Lucas has been around.
Yep.
Leia dresses in all white. She's royalty. Han is in much more dark clothes because he's just some underworld guy. But this scene, when we see Jack Black and we see Lizzo, before I sat down for this episode, I actually thought to myself, I was like, I wonder who the guest celebrity is going to be in this, the guest star. Because there's a difference between cameos and guest stars. Last week, we saw Zeb Aurelios. This week, we get Lizzo and Jack Black. Zeb is a cameo. Lizzo and Jack Black are guest stars. I do not go into every Mandalorian episode thinking who is going to cameo this week. I often think, what verbal references are we going to get to the rest of the universe? How are they going to tie this into the rest of the universe? But I've started to go into the Mandalorian episode with Tim Meadows last week, thinking who is the actor that we're going to get, or who's the Star Wars director that we're going to get in a background shot.
And we have no idea. There's no leaks on these or anything.
Right. But I'll say that I don't know if going into these episodes like that is a good thing.
Yeah, it might not be.
I don't know. Star Wars, especially the films. I mean, if you look at the original film, the only person who had any name recognition is Alec Guinness. I mean, he is the only billing on that's worth anything. And throughout the Star Wars trilogy, they have used little-known actors or actors starting out pretty early, and they usually have one guy who is a little more famous to prop up the rest of the cast, but most of the cast and the main characters are usually not famous people.
Even James Earl Jones, you can find interviews where he was paid almost nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
For A New Hope.
Exactly. And so...
and by the third one, he was very famous, right?
Yes. And so I think Star Wars is at its best when it's helping people start their careers, where it's kind of kicking people off or making them big. I mean, Pedro Pascal was in Game of Thrones before this. He was in a couple things. He wasn't small, but he was not the household name that he is now. He's one of the biggest actors on the planet now. And that's because of Star Wars. And so when you get these elevated careers and elevated actors because of Star Wars, it's really cool. I don't want to see Star Wars turn into this, I don't want to say favors. I don't think that they were like, we're going to do Jack Black a favor and put him in here. But I don't want to see it just become a celebrities' agents are reaching out to Lucasfilm and like, my guy wants to be in Star Wars. So they're like, okay. And then they put every famous actor you've ever heard of in Star Wars.
That's kind of rampant nowadays, isn't it? There was Ed Sheeran. He was in Game of Thrones.
Right.
And Daniel Craig was a stormtrooper in what is it?
In The Force Awakens. Yep.
And we didn't see his face, but
see, I'm actually more okay with the stormtrooper thing than anything else because they're faceless and nameless. But giving them large parts like Jack Black and Lizzo and Christopher Lloyd,
and it'd be but another thing if like Bill Burr playing what's his name in earlier
Miggs Mayfield,
right? And he gets to be a recurring character because he did such a phenomenal job.
He did a good job.
Such a good character.
Bill Burr is not like Jack Black and Christopher Lloyd and Lizzo are monumentally famous people. Like they are huge household names. At least Bill Burr, he's famous. I'm not discounting Bill Burr's career. He is a very famous comedian. I think he's a hilarious comedian, but he's not on their level. I mean, and this was, one of his breaks into acting. And so seeing Bill Burr in this role makes me a little more comfortable, and they built him further into the show. Maybe if Jack Black and Lizzo and Christopher Lloyd were recurring characters, I would feel more comfortable with them being built into the show like this as just kind of supporting role characters that are in more than one episode. But I didn't really get the vibe that that's going to happen in this episode.
Yeah, these actors cost too much.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're having to pay Pedro for every episode anyway.
Right. And then the last thing I'll say is, and these for these characters, the names weren't super important. One of them, I mean, Lizzo's character literally doesn't have a name. She's just called the Duchess.
We didn't find out till 3/4 of the way through. Bombardier and the Duchess.
Exactly. And so, I mean, for the sake of this podcast, I'm probably just going to be like, oh, and Jack Black said this. And so it's really like, it's not that it's super important that they have names, but they're playing, no-name characters, and they're doing that because I think the directors and Jon Favreau know they can't write them big character names because you're not going to remember, because the whole time you're going to be like, yeah, and then Jack Black did this, and then Jack Black did that.
Yep.
And so I don't know. That was an observation I had about the show. I liked all three of the cameos. I didn't have a problem with it. I just feel like it could become a problem. So we get an amnesty program name drop when Jack Black is talking because he's a success story. He was an Imperial something. I mean, apparently
planning officer.
Yeah,
facilities planning officer.
So Jack Black designed Narkina 5, and he was terrible to Cassian Andor, and now he just gets to live on this affluent planet because that's the New Republic way. But anyway, Jack Black shows he's still wearing the amnesty program pin, and he seems to be a success story of the program. He has been rehabilitated.
Married the Duchess, and is a well-liked leader. He mentions that not only were they royalty, the Duchess was royalty. She mentions that their family settled the planet.
Yep.
And so, 1,000 generations, who knows, right? And she's a descendant of that. He married her, and they were subsequently elected in direct democracy elections. What most of us are familiar with is some sort of electoral college where we vote for electors. It's very convoluted.
Or a parliamentary system.
Parliamentary systems
across
or
the
we
pond.
Vote for a representative. This was, there are tens of thousands of people on the planet. This means people voted for them. This means people voted for the other guys. And the same royalty that had been their leaders before was elected, which is a big deal.
Yes, it is. And they were proud of that fact because they were royalty and then they had become elected. And then, further throughout this, we get reference to, well, in just a moment, actually, because it comes up. And so I'll bring it up in just a moment. Grogu, when they sit down at the table, they're explaining their problem. The Duchess asks to hold the baby, and Din's like, no, that's not a good idea. She dangles a little bit of food, and Grogu front flips into her arms. And then Din goes, And I got to tell you, that was me in this scene. I was like, oh, man. Like, this is where the camp and the pulp really gets ratcheted up. As soon as that door opens and the room comes in, I'm like, okay, this is what's happening. We're about to watch an episode of the Clone Wars of droids, not just the Clone Wars. We're about to watch an episode, R2-D2 goes to the spa level of Clone Wars episode.
This is my conspiracy theory on this is Lizzo is friends with Favreau or somebody, and she says, hey, I want to hold that doll. And
so, actually, yes.
And then she says, oh, well, why would you just make an episode where all you do is hold the doll?
Right. So
that's what happens.
Lizzo has done live streams and videos talking about this, about how much she likes Grogu and how much she wanted to hold Grogu. So this is what happened.
We've done live streams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We would
podcasts.
also, I will be in an episode of Star Wars where all I get to do is hold Grogu. That's all you need to pay me.
But that was Grogu's role in this episode, was to be extremely emotive. All he did was coo and make noises in the whole episode and jump around, and that's fine. He used some force powers. That's fine. But it was cool to see him he wasn't in the last episode. He sat in Den's lap, right?
Right.
I mean, he needs to be in more stuff, which is what we're going to get to in the next two, right?
Yeah, and he's effectively, a lot of people are saying, and I think it's becoming more and more clear, that perhaps the plan originally was not to reunite Din and Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett, because this whole season has kind of felt like Grogu is an afterthought, that he is included in things, but not really, because he probably wasn't written as much into the season.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. I'm sure that he's going to turn up more in the last two episodes. They are not going to sideline him in the last two episodes. But he has been sidelined in a couple episodes, and that may because the season was originally written with Bo-Katan and Din in mind, without Grogu, and for whatever reason, he was written back in. And we don't know the reason. And so it's just an interesting observation that I've seen some people make online that sounds like it may have some credence.
Yep.
So the Duchess and Captain Bombardier, they have a problem. They tell Din and Bo-Katan that they will not introduce them to the Mandalorians until they solve their problem. It's a little bit of quid pro quo action right here. And so they take them to the balcony. They start to talk about what their problem is, and it's that droids are running rampant, and they need to figure out why. They want the Mandalorians to take out the rest of the rogue droids. And so they essentially agree there's not really any problem here. But the reason that they need these two specifically to do it is because their charter forbids weapons in their city. Their charter also forbids any armed military that they're paying to come into the city with weapons. And then they say, but our society voted into pluralism, so since weapons are part of your religion, you're allowed to carry weapons here, yada, yada, yada. And so this is where we see the first direct democracy thing that they talk about, in that not only does this society direct democracy their leaders, this is a direct democracy in like the sense of Athens, in that citizens are voting on referendums to be made into law all the time. Like the citizens are voting on nearly every law. And so they have laws like this. Oh, well, should we be pluralistic, or should we have one religion or one culture or whatever? And they voted for pluralism. And so now they're using loopholes in their laws to allow them to circumvent other laws that they've made.
Right. And it's kind of crazy to see, but they live in a masterpiece society almost, right?
Right, exactly.
And so I guess it works for them on the Outer Rim out here.
Are you familiar, I'm sure, with the Society If meme? It's like, it has the opulent, the Hyperloop and a domed city in that exact picture. And it's like, society if... Oh gosh, I don't know.
Yeah,
if it rained beer and whiskey all the time. And then it's just this, and that would probably not be the case in that scenario. But regardless, this is literally the Society If meme. The planet is the meme.
Right.
And so it's a direct comparison. And so that's what it is. It's like, society if direct democracy is the line that they're drawing here. And so they start on the mystery. This episode is a Scooby-Doo mystery from start to finish.
Yeah, and this is the first hint that this calls back an Asimov novel, because there's a robot series in these Asimov books that is has to do with robots. That's what
iRobot in this series.
Yes.
Okay.
But iRobot is a collection of short stories. There's Caves of Steel and a few others, and so these are murder mysteries in this case, or something's gone wrong and a detective has come to figure it out. but it delves into a lot of other, most murder mysteries or mysteries that we watch as humans have to deal with who done it or who stole it or stuff like that. It's humans interacting with humans, and there's stuff like that. When you're dealing with droids, it's this markedly science fiction aspect that is different. And the books are so intriguing because they go into robot psychology and what motivates a robot to do such things. And sometimes it's silly, like, I didn't kill this person. I just let go of the giant heavy object and gravity killed him. And so these stupid logic loops that robots can convince themselves of that not what we think of and challenge the mind. And so this is what the first hint of what I'm hoping for in this episode, right?
Right, yeah, and like you mentioned in Rapid Reactions and like we've already talked about, you're a huge Asimov guy, and you're right that, I haven't read much Asimov, but I've read a little bit of it, and the fingerprints are all over this episode. Even some direct lines that Den says really feel right out of Asimov.
Which we'll get into.
And so there is the mystery has begun, and it's to me, it's Scooby-Doo. This feels like Scooby-Doo. This is like the Clone Wars episodes where the investigator is involved. They've got to solve a mystery, and they're going to go from point A to point B to point C to point D, back to point A to figure out the mystery. And so they go to the first character that they have to talk to, which is Christopher Lloyd's character, a person who we also don't get his name at the beginning, but we later find out his name is Commissioner Hellgate. And so he explains to them that this society has no need for work, that nobody works, that the droids do everything, and that the droids are malfunctioning, but they can't shut them off because the pluralistic society, or the direct democracy society, has voted to not shut the droids off because they can't live without them, because there's no way that they can live without them.
The fail-safe button they have will work, but it's illegal to press it, is what he says. Right. So this is the second thing of why this is an Asimov deal. In After I, Robot, the book is called... I forget, but it's a contrast of, robots existing where we are as humans on Earth and robots existing on the fictional planet Aurora in this book. And so Aurora is the first planet that humans colonized. And so the book goes into massive detail on what that means for humans in that era. And so, for one, if you're going to go live on another planet, the guy who cleans toilets isn't going to be the one who gets to immigrate. It's the scientists. It's the ultra smart people. It's the fantastical engineers. The Neil deGrasse Tysons and the Elon Musk are the ones who are going to get to go. That's thing one. Thing two is, you're not going to take anybody who gets sick, who has chronic illness. And in the books, it even goes so far as to a bacteria will kill these people because they're so perfect. And then the third thing is, because they're starting from scratch with all these high-minded people and robots are doing all the work, it's a masterpiece society. They're planned out who's born, lives, and dies, almost when. And then everything is built to perfection. There's not like old zoning laws to the extreme, right? And so... it also exploring, this is a contrast in Star Wars. In all of Star Wars, droids are helpers and a nuisance to most people.
Right. And they're, sometimes they're just like other beings. They're just part of the galaxy, like IG-88 or the Bounty Hunter droids.
Right. And they're, we see L337 in contrast to that, and a bunch of the books delve into, but in this society on Plazir 15, droids do everything. That Christopher Lloyd's character... Commander, what is his name?
Commissioner Hellgate.
Commissioner Hellgate remarks that all we do is focus on the arts. All we do is focus on playing. And that's what they did in this Asimov book in Aurora. That's all they did.
Right.
Was fantastical things that we only dream of. Think about if we posted pictures or made podcasts all day, right? Yeah. That's what we do. We wouldn't go haul trash. We wouldn't go build houses. It'd be a robot doing that.
Right.
Every dirty job that you can think of, a robot would do. And even most other jobs, you'd be a fantastical chef, right? But if you're just going to go get your breakfast burrito, that you eat every other day for breakfast or your cup of coffee. It's going to be a droid making that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, food is only food made by human hands or by the term's slipping me for just
chef.
living organic hands.
Yeah.
Not a chef. I know chef,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I meant like a creature in Star Wars that is not human. But organics, if it was made by organics, then it's art. Then,
Yeah,
it's
Michelin
a
star
high
restaurants.
level of food. Yeah.
Right.
That a droid probably still could make. It's just, it's better made by human hands. But,
And so
yeah.
for me, and of course we'll get into later, I'll harp on some of this stuff, not as lengthy, but this solidifies it's an Asimov story. It's the contrast in the Star Wars universe. This society lives with droids. Most of what society does not.
Right.
Like in the Asimov books, when robots were first invented, they rejected them. It was like, some racist tropes from the past or something like that of we don't want them around type thing. They're taking jobs or something like that.
I mean, they're all Din Djarin, basically. They're all anti-robot. Maybe not for
Right.
the same reason,
Right.
but they are anti-droid.
Yeah, and so I don't know, this is all fiction, right? But it's so fun to explore these things. It's so fun for me. I'm having, it's my heart is palpitating a little bit because I get to see fiction. Like Star Wars is an adventure. It's a hack 'em, slash 'em, shoot 'em up stuff. I love that. Don't get me wrong. And with the science fiction theme. But like Star Trek has all these science fiction call outs. This is science fiction call outs of not just technology and transporters and replicators and fancy shields and doing tech stuff. This is science fiction concepts and how humans, or in Star Wars cases,
Organics.
Organics. You can't say humans, right? Because they have wide plethora of aliens. In Asimov books, it's fun to discuss. Humans are it. Mm-hmm. There are no aliens.
Right.
They don't exist. And so it like, what if, right? Thank goodness we get to see this in Star Wars. I like the diversity. It's really cool to explore alien species and what Ugnaughts. We're fixing to talk about them, right?
Yeah. Well, you bring up a very important part by bringing up the Ugnaughts in that. So Christopher Lloyd's talking about, nobody works, everyone practices art. First observation is, well, that's not completely true because Christopher Lloyd works. Christopher Lloyd is doing a job, and so are all those people in there.
Well,
so that's the
he loves his job.
Well, that's the point. Is they all have to be doing this basically out of love for the job, and Christopher Lloyd clearly does. The other people presumably do because they could have a droid have done this. I mean, this is also work that a droid can do. They're just watching security cameras. Droids watching droids. There's another whole philosophical argument and thing to get into, but
Well, we can get
regardless,
into it. It happens later in this.
there are people working. But this society is not without work. It's clear because droids break, and Ugnaughts are working underneath the levels of their society. The Ugnaughts live underground. Bo-Katan even says, you may not have heard, but on the surface, implying that the Ugnaughts don't even leave, which is kind of the case in Cloud City and kind of the case for Ugnaughts in general. They live to work. Ugnaught society is based around work. Din remarks that they are the greatest workers in the galaxy. But still, there's a huge juxtaposition between the Plazarites and the Ugnaughts here, in that the Ugnaughts are doing work for the Plazarites, and we don't know about the compensation or anything. I mean, I'm not venturing to say that they are enslaved, but that there are people in this society that don't work, but there are certainly people in this society and sentient beings in this society that must work because they are working on droids. And so the claim, oh, nobody works on Plazir 15 is on the face false from the beginning, and that is a huge part of Christopher Lloyd's motivation, or Commissioner Hellgate's motivation, in the later part of the show, in that his society is completely different than what he had remembered it as just, a few short decades before. And so there's another commentary in this episode about is there ever truly a point where you can have a utopian society where nobody works? And that just doesn't seem to be the case in this society specifically.
Yeah. Humans struggle with this for all time, I think.
And I mean, people talk about the need for humans to work. Is there a need for humans to work? Must you pursue work as part of, is it that intrinsically part of humanity?
And we'd love to have this discussion with you on Discord. I don't think we need to get into the depths. I would be happy to.
Well,
right
we've
now,
got
if you want.
plenty of episode to cover also is the problem.
But-
so yeah, this is definitely a Discord conversation.
And I love, Carter and I actually have this debate otherwise outside of this stuff. It's a fun conversation. It will never end because
Right. Yeah, exactly.
somebody always has a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a good point to be made on either side of it. And so come talk to us about it on Discord. It's just, if our podcast was longer form, say 6 hours, maybe we would talk about it.
Yeah, or
but
the
we've got to
Facebook
get to the
page.
rest of the episode. Yeah, the Facebook group's a good place too. Anyway, before the Ugnaught scene, there is a little bit of an elevator conversation where we re-dredge up Din's hatreds of droids. We don't get into his past specifically, but we all know as the viewer, and maybe Bo-Katan doesn't know, it's pretty likely she doesn't know, why Din hates droids. And that's because his family was killed by droids, by battle droids. They were killed by separatist battle droids during the Clone War. Din was picked up by the Children of the Watch, by Death Watch at that time. And so Din has, at the very beginning of The Mandalorian, a deep distrust and hatred for droids. And we see that kind of resurface in this episode after Din has come a long way in trusting droids and having R5 around him all the time, trusting IG-11 after IG-11's huge sacrifice at the end of Season 1. And so moving in that direction is a really important part that they brought up for Din that I'm happy they didn't just drop that plot point like a hot potato. They didn't say, Din's over it. Because, being around all these droids, specifically models of droids that literally killed his family, would bring out these feelings.
Yeah, and he's extra cautious throughout the episode. He's a butthead to all these guys, all that droids. Right. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So they sit down with the Ugnaughts. Din brings up that he knows the Ugnaught Queel. This is a very tight-knit society. It's a big galaxy out there, but they know who that guy is. And so they're willing to sit down with him. He kind of knows how to work with the Ugnaughts after Bo-Katan is clearly struggling with it. I think this is actually probably a pretty important scene because it's showing us a little bit, for lack of a better term, how worldly Din is and how not worldly Bo-Katan is. Bo-Katan is very familiar with Mandalorian culture. She grew up on Mandalore. She cares so much about Mandalore. But she wasn't the emissary for her planet like her sister Satine was. She wasn't going out into the wider galaxy and doing things that we know of. I mean, she was fighting people. She was fighting the Separatists. She was fighting the Republic. She was fighting the Empire. And she's really pretty unfamiliar with alien species in the galaxy or the way other societies in the galaxy work outside of the Mandalorians, the Republic, and the Jedi.
Yeah, she's uncultured.
Yeah, basically. And so I think this may be setting up something really important that when she takes control of this society, when she is leading the Mandalorians, that Din certainly still has a place beside her for a number of reasons. The first, or one of the main, is that he is so worldly, that he, or again, for lack of a better word, galaxily, but that he understands a lot more than her about the wider galaxy.
Right. Yeah, good points.
And so they have the conversation with the Ugnaughts. The Ugnaughts let them know where to find the malfunctioning droids or where to go look.
Yeah, they say the next one is probably going to happen over here.
Right, they have a list. And we don't know why the Ugnaughts kind of know this, but they have a list. And so we go to a loading dock where it's just a conveyor belt line of B2s loading stuff led by a B1. This was my favorite part of the episode. Maybe not the best, maybe not my favorite, but one of the highlights was
all the battle droids.
I know, all the battle droids, but seeing the B1 and specifically hearing the voice that they gave the B1 out of the Clone Wars. It's the same voice actor who, I don't remember who plays the B1 droid in the Clone Wars, but it's the same voice actor. And that was really cool as a consistency because, as many people know, they changed the B1 voice between the Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace B1 sounds really menacing. It's got like a deep, more like throaty voice. B1s after that in Revenge of the Sith and the Clone Wars have the high, more comedic voice because they transitioned from, they weren't scary in the Phantom Menace, but if you notice, they're never comedic relief in the Phantom Menace, but they were comedic relief in Revenge of the Sith and in the Clone Wars, obviously.
Yep.
And so this is the more comedic relief voice, but I'm really, really happy to hear this B1. And his last line, you're just like, feel so bad for him. He's just trying to do his job. He cares about droids. He cares about his coworkers. So they're trying to investigate these battle droids. They're trying to figure out what's wrong. While Bo-Katan questions this droid, Din is just like, whatever. And he is just messing with these droids. He's kicking them, trying to see if one of them's going to overreact. The B1's like, what are you doing? Quit. You know, they're programmed for battle. And he's like, I thought they were reprogrammed. And he's just kicking B2s until he kicks one and knocks it over. And it immediately rocks him right across the face. It's hilarious.
Yeah, he takes off too, just cutting down.
Oh, man.
He's so fast.
The B2 droids are modeled after Usain Bolt. We have never seen a droid move like that in the Clone Wars or anything. They're slow, lumbering, shooting, and everything. Except this thing, that droid is hooking it. Like,
Yeah.
he is sprinting. And as he sprints away, the B1 yells, "You should have left him alone." And it's, again, it's just like in the saddest voice. You feel so bad for that B1. But they're chasing this B2 through a bunch of streets. It's kind of a long chase scene.
Yeah, it was. It reminded me of what's the planet we saw in Obi-Wan?
Dayu.
Dayu, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded me of Dayu kind of, but none of these people have jobs. I guess they're just bar hopping.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, every night. Because this is where I really felt the Coruscant bar scene vibes. Like, this is what it felt like to me, was just this nightlife right here. Felt like that. And so you see Din just chase this B2 down. Bo-Katan chase it down. Din has to cut it off and tackle it, which...
Jumps through a plate glass window to do it.
No
Pretty
idea
cool.
how heavy that had to have been. I mean, Din was carrying some force behind him on that tackle.
Yeah.
And then Bo-Katan can neutralize it. And I get, especially in this scene, why Din is so trying to get this droid. Because, again, B2s are specifically the droids that killed his family. Specifically the droids that were dropped off and attacked his home planet.
Yeah.
So Din has a prejudice against all droids. He is specifically prejudiced against this one.
Yeah, he put his shoulder into it pretty good. He was happy to knock this thing down for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So we see they find what's called a spark card on this droid. What did you think a spark card was when you first saw this? Like, what came across your mind? Because I was
sort of
confused.
drug or something, right? You know, I don't know.
That was what I was getting at. And I had to look at what people were saying online and kind of figure out, like, what was this thing? Because I was like, one, we never get an explanation. So I was
a
little
business card.
Well, see, that's what some people said. I think it was a little more, comes from a bar. It's like a matchbook that you get when you pick it up from a bar. I mean, spark card, like,
yeah.
They don't ever say it's specific. The word spark made it sound like it was specific to droids. But she looks at it, and then she goes, spark card with the resistor on it. And then he says, that sounds like a droid bar, not implying that spark cards are only available with droid bars. And so that was something that I thought was important.
Yeah. Yep. And so then they go to the resistor, right? And this is the last scene from the trailers.
Right. No more trailers.
It takes a minute for them to walk in. All the droids turn their heads. And this is what was in the trailer. So there's no more trailer scenes.
No, yeah.
What is left? The last two episodes, we have no clue what's coming.
No scenes or anything. We knew this was going to be in one of the last three, and so we got it. And so now they're gone. And so this, again, kind of reiterated to me that this was like the Clone Wars. This was going to be like the episodes where we follow the droids on the Clone Wars and just be kind of a more silly episode. The droid bar concept itself isn't silly, and this is one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, is the droid bar and them showing up there is all really neat. They come in, music goes dead, all the droids are staring at them, and they go up to talk to the bar. Din makes a comment, they don't get much of our kind in here, just like, on Shalom's Cantina in the first Star Wars. We don't serve your kind here, talking to the droids. And so you see the droids drinking some kind of liquid, which, why are droids drinking? How do they drink? Well, we get that from the bartender. The bartender at first is just a little hesitant to talk to him, but then he's explaining to them that, these droids like humans. These droids, humans are organic.
This is after an important conversation. So Din is being a butthead to this droid. That's my word of the day, butthead.
Yeah.
Back to the Future. Christopher Lloyd has planted some in my brain, right?
Right.
So he's not being very nice to these droids, because Bo-Katan before is like, let me talk to him. I can handle this, right? Mm-hmm. But Din doesn't let her get a word in almost. He threatens the droid, and then Bo pulls him aside and says, you need to be, we need this guy to cooperate. You can't be mean to him like this.
Right.
And I forget the exact terms. I should have wrote it down, but he says, droids were not programmed to hurt.
Droids. He said you can't reason with a droid.
You can't reason with a droid. Yeah. Bo-Katan says, that's all they do is reason.
Yep.
And then he says, they're programmed for logic. All they do is reason. Mm-hmm. Well, they're programmed not to hurt organics, and you see how that turned out.
Yes,
something along those lines. Okay, so this is another Asimov callback, right? This is the conversation that so many characters have in these old books: is how are these things capable of happening? Droids can't hurt people. Robots can't hurt people.
Yeah, the three laws of robotics.
The three laws of robotics, and so there's so many of these old books are about that. And it's so fun. I mean, because this is going, in our lifetimes, or my child lifetimes, is going to have real world implications. And again on our Discord. If you want to know what that means, I don't want to get into this podcast, but there are AIs out there who have already done things that aren't positive, right? And I'm not talking anything about politics. I'm talking about personal. And something's going to happen in our lifetimes, and definitely my children's lifetimes, that where AI or robots or something is going to have to have, in my opinion, these 3 laws. And there's going to be a lot of thought. You talk about new jobs being made. There's going to be or AI psychologists out there, in my opinion, that are talked about in these Asimov books. It's really fun to think about.
Right. And
so spurred by 3 lines in this stupid episode.
Right. And this is a clear callback to those 3 lines from those Asimov, or the 3 rules from those Asimov books. And so they get back to talking with the droid, and he says, hey, we're cool with humans. Like, they're with organics. Sorry. They're cool with organics. These droids are talking about how organics give them purpose. Yeah. That, we're around forever. We were created by the organics. The least they could do is help them out. These organics on Plazir 15 don't ask very much of them. This is a very interesting contrast to L337 from Solo.
Yeah,
she's all about droid rights and droids independent. She'd be very upset with the droids in this part, because the droids they have a purpose. They enjoy their purpose. They're programmed to do this. This is what they want to do.
Yeah, and so, I mean, we can go into a lot on this too. I mean, this one, he was just answering questions at first and being cryptic about it, but then once he was threatened, he opened up and spilled his beans a little bit, right? And most droids, why don't they push back like L337? They're just docile. They just, oh, yes, master, and do what they do. Well, this is why. They live forever. This gives them purpose. And that's really cool to think about.
Right. No, yeah, it is. And so we see the droids all beep in unison. I really thought that was a cool little scene. All the droids are doing different beeps and raising up their sounds because they want this problem solved. They don't want droids to have a bad name. They don't want to be replaced. And so the droid bartender takes them to the back, explains droids come to this bar not for different drinks like humans would or like organics would. They come for Nepenthe, one specific drink, and it's a oil lubricant that they imbibe or they take in, and that it reprograms them with whatever the program the mainframe has, and it lubricates them. Exactly. And so they learn that the Nepenthe, that all of the droids that are malfunctioning, it all came from the same batch. And so they then have to go to the next part of this mystery mission. And, it's just, they've gone to Christopher Lloyd, then they went to the droid, then they went to the droid bar. Now they got to go to this doctor, to basically a morgue where they're storing a droid body. It's got to be like a prison complex, but they do it. It's morgue style.
Science area.
It's morgue style. They pull them out of the wall just like a dead body. I mean, this is straight out of NCIS. And so they're there. They're like, they take the Nepenthe out, and this white ball droid floating, obviously a interrogator droid, not literally an interrogator droid, but the medical version of an interrogator droid.
Yeah, it's a science droid now.
And so this immediately reminded me, this way more than anything else, there's a Robot Chicken skit called Dr. Ball, MD, and it's the really short, Robot Chicken skit about the interrogator droid being an actual medical doctor and it being like House. Yeah. And this is that. This is Dr. Ball, MD right here. It's taking the Nepenthe out. It's in a medical setting. Like, this droid is Dr. Ball.
That's hilarious.
So they're analyzing the Nepenthe. They see that it has nanodroids in it.
Nanobots, yep.
Then Dr. Ball malfunctions and starts shooting lasers, and we see Din bust out the Darksaber and scrap Dr. Ball.
Cleaves it right in half.
Yeah, exactly. And so then they sit back down, they're analyzing, and they see that there are... enhance. And so they see that there is nanodroids in the Nepenthe. They give a Techno Union name drop, which is just another Attack of the Clones, Clone Wars name drop, Wat Tambor. And so these nanodroids were manufactured to make these droids malfunction. And so the only person that could have done this is the person that ordered these nanodroids, and it is the security office. Who runs the security office? Commissioner Hellgate. And so they go back to Commissioner Hellgate, the guy that they first talked to. Classic Scooby-Doo. They get in there, and they accuse him of putting these nanodroids in the droid water supply. He's poisoned the water hole. And then he reveals himself. He is a separatist, but they call him a. He says
these lines are so good.
he is a political zealot, and he says, and then Bo-Katan calls him a separatist, and he says separatist
you're a
is
separatist.
pejorative.
You're
and
a
this
separatist,
is
aren't you?
Exact words he uses. Separatist is pejorative. I'm going to stop the first part of this line right there. They called themselves separatists. Dooku uses that word all the time. Grievous uses that word all the time. Their Senate uses that word all the time. Like, I don't think separatist is a pejorative term. That is not true, Commissioner Hellgate. They called themselves this because he's not some new separatist. He's not some kind of like seed from the New Republic. They're already an independent world. This guy is a separatist zealot from the Confederacy of Independent Systems because we get a Dooku name drop. He says Count Dooku was a visionary. And he was cut down in his prime by the Jedi. He says, I don't give up. I didn't give up to the corrupt Republic. I didn't give up to the Empire. Like, he just keeps, like you said, delivering these great lines about how he is a separatist political zealot. And
the most important one is what? He names drops Count Dooku.
Right.
And then he says, I want this exact quote. I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry. But he says,
he was cut down in his prime
by this Jedi,
Yes.
dot. Oh, man.
Right. Cut down in his prime by the Jedi. And so that was super cool.
He's Jedi, and he was in the middle of the word, if you close caption, in fort, and then Din Bo-Katan shot him.
Yeah.
With the taser. She tased him.
And
Don't
so
tase me, bro.
he's delivering these lines. It's cool to get to see a callback to the Clone Wars like this, a callback to Attack of the Clones, because as you know, anyone in the galaxy knows, they never know that Dooku was a Sith Lord. Still, even after the fall of the Empire, they don't, like, Sith Lord isn't something that they know. They don't know that Palpatine was. Most of the New Republic doesn't even know that he was a Sith Lord.
Probably most people don't know Jedi even exist or Force users at all.
Exactly. And so he was there. Dooku was a political leader to him. Dooku was the head of state of the Confederacy, and he was their hero.
He was a former Jedi Master who became Count Dooku for very good reasons. And what's that book? It's the
very good reasons in Dooku and Hellgate's eyes. But yeah, the book is Dooku Jedi Lost.
Yes.
And then we also get to see it much more in Tales of the Jedi, the series.
Right.
And it's an audio drama.
That's right.
And it's super good. And it really does justify what Dooku does to himself. You see how Dooku gets in his mind. You see the corruption of the Republic that he wants to fight against.
He's not just another Sith. He's not just another face in the crowd.
Right.
He means something to billions of people.
Yes, he is a actual political leader. He believes in his mission. He believed in his mission too much, and he falls to the dark side, and he becomes evil. But he had a purpose, and he wanted to corral the corruption of the Republic. And so this is his start and his descent to the dark side. But like you said, to this guy and to billions of individuals, billions of organics, he was this, righteous political leader that just wanted to rein in the corruption of the Republic, which is a half-truth, but there is truth to that.
Right.
And so he name drops Dooku, but they take him in. They bring Commissioner Hellgate in.
Before the Duchess and Captain Bombardier.
Yes, but before that, we see them playing like space croquet. They're tossing like centipedes through hoops. It's like space croquet with bugs and Quidditch.
Roly-poly.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know that Grogu is helping them. He's like holding up his hand, using the Force to give her a super high score. These people have no idea that he's Force sensitive. He's some animal. He's a pet. He's like a dog to them. And so he's over there on her leg using the Force. And I do have a question: is why did Din leave Grogu with a perfect stranger? He just met these people. That seemed out of character for me.
Yeah. If he's going to fly around in a ship shooting down pirates, he can go with Ugnaughts and all the other people.
Right, Grogu could walk around with them. I mean, it's bassinet floats. I was really surprised that he didn't accompany
If
them.
I were a small child given the choice of hanging out with this fancy Duchess playing with croquet or scrounging around with droid bars and whatever else, I think I'd choose the croquet.
Yeah, you're right. And so this was just a little scene, but they bring Commissioner Hellgate in.
Secretions. Who would turn down secretions, Carter?
Tasty secretions. They bring Hellgate in, and then Hellgate and the Duchess and Captain Bombardier, they all have a conversation about how he has failed them, and that the forgiveness is the key. It's just all real. Come together at the end.
When this is the motive. I had to, I got done watching this, wrote down on my notes, did the rapid reactions. I'm like, well, why did he do what he did? Do you know why? Why did Commissioner Hellgate do what he did?
Because he says that the society has been completely changed since Captain Bombardier got there. They imply that the droids, that they weren't this direct democracy before he got there. The droids had not done all the work for everybody. Commissioner Hellgate is sitting there saying that his society is just completely different. It is completely changed, and he felt like he had to resort to this form of terrorism, basically, to wake his society up and bring them back to reality.
So
in his eyes.
he was sabotaging the droids to hopefully turn people away from them.
Right.
That they would turn like the droid bar says it. We're afraid of being replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
they're
what
like, by
Hellgate
what?
wants.
By organics.
Yeah.
Right.
And he wants everyone to have a job, basically. And so he apologizes. He's going to have to go be exiled on their moon of Parquat.
Yep.
And so he saunters away in his handcuffs, and then the Duchess awards Bo-Katan and Din the key to Plazir, which, again, this was just super campy, really pulpy stuff. She then knights Grogu in the Night of Independent Regencies. It was just all really over-the-top stuff. And so we see
There's
all of this
gonna
go
be a
down.
scene in Mandalorian season 7. I am Grogu, Knight of Independent Regencies, first of his name.
Exactly. And so, yeah, this was just another one of the little things throughout that I was like, this is really campy, really pulpy, a little too much for me. This feels like the 70s comic book. I will say, though, when they're leaving, and the Duchess waves to Grogu, Grogu waves back. That was cute. That was good. I like that little insertion.
Mystery solved. Everybody's having a good day. Except
Exactly.
We got the next scene.
And this
the
is this is the meat. This is
What
where
we've
we
all
get
been
the
waiting for.
end chunk of the episode is where we're getting all of this. So, Bo-Katan and Din and Grogu are going through the Hyperloop to the Mandalorians. They're talking, Mando's Din says, what are you going to do? Bo-Katan, I'm just going to have to figure out when I get there because she doesn't know how they're going to be received. We then get a good shot pan of the whole Mandalorian fleet. We see in detail the Cormac fighters. We see the 2 Gazantes. We see the Imperial light cruiser.
The scale is such a cool shot. The
It's
scale
good,
is
yeah.
amazing.
The scales are amazing. It is a great shot. You're right. We really need to dwell on it for a second because it looks so cool. I mean, seeing the Mandalorian craft parked outside of this thing, knowing now that we have 300 Mandos and this fleet at our disposal for the next 2 episodes is really exciting. And we're going to get into that in Always in Motion. We're going to talk about what this means for the next 2 episodes.
I wonder if those Comric fighters can hook up to the Gozanti. Well, I understand they have hyperspace
anyway,
but
no, I
still,
understand.
it's just really cool. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for this next episode.
No, yeah, that's a good thought. That is a good thought. So, they're panning over this. All the Mandalorians are kind of camping out. They're not sparring like the Children of the Watch were. They're more like hanging out. Like they're sitting around drinking. There's 2 Mandos literally playing catch. There's a ball. They're throwing a ball back and forth. I thought that was super good. Just a little it's so funny that you see them just in the back. Just they're hanging out. If this is the rival Mandalorian summer camp. In the last few episodes, I've referred to the Children of the Watches as summer camp. This is the other summer camp. This is across the lake. You do the events against each other. This is just perfect because these Mandos are hanging out. The Children of the Watch guys are working out. They're training and they're man, the other Mandos are sitting around. They're playing ball. I want to go to that summer camp. They don't have to wear their mask all day. And so they're sitting there and they're just hanging out. And then Bo-Katan walks up and Axe Woves sitting there and he goes, "Did you come to join the mercenaries?" Because he's, kind of taunting her. They're not going to follow her. She doesn't have the Darksaber. She says she's here for her fleet. And he says, well, it's my fleet now. Or he says, you've lost your fleet. And I've grown really fond of leadership or really fond of ruling or whatever he says. Axe Woves is kind of a jerk. We had one line from the guy before this. Now he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, what is she going to tell these guys? I saw the Mythosaur, and they're going to be yeah, right.
Right.
And
they're
so
not going to believe her.
she acts like any Mandalorian would, doesn't back down, doesn't try and reason with them, straight up right out the gate. I challenge you for leadership.
Yeah, which is
to a
cool.
duel.
Awesome. Super awesome.
Very cool. And it is not a casual duel either. There's not just pulling out a knife or a fist. They use every trick in the book.
Right.
Lariats, flamethrowers, knives, they don't use blasters, but they use darts.
Yeah, and
right?
they use rockets. And I would be willing to say that Axe Woves was trying to kill Bo-Katan. I don't think, but we see Bo-Katan wasn't trying to kill Woves because she asks him to yield twice. He refuses, but she doesn't kill him still.
And she has him dead to rights both times. She could
Yeah.
have slashed his throat or impaled him or something easily.
Exactly. But I think he was going for the kill.
Yep.
And that's why we never see him locked up, because he
But
just
she
would've killed her.
outclassed him in a major way. Like, he could only respond to her attacks almost.
Right. But this is like our first really good Mandalorian on Mandalorian fight. Like,
Yeah.
we haven't seen one. We've seen,
Last
we
one was
we
Paz
saw
Vizsla,
Paz and
right?
yeah, we saw Paz and Din spar, and that one was really good. But they were on a rickety platform. It was a lot of hand-to-hand stuff. This was everything: the jetpack, the flamethrower, the darts, like you said, all of their weapons. You know, we got to see them in action. I bet that filming this took days for those for the stunt doubles to do.
Yep.
And so it was a really cool fight. Bo-Katan wins handily, like we said, and she's sitting there with her knife on Axe Wove's throat, and he's, you know, just refusing to yield, and he's talking to Bo-Katan about how she's not fit to rule. She doesn't even have the Darksaber. She won't challenge Din to get the Darksaber. And Bo-Katan is awesome here. I really like her line because she is reinforcing the fact that she is tired of fighting. Mandalorians have spilled enough of each other's blood that they do not need to fight each other anymore. And it's reinforcing that Bo-Katan is so experienced. She's seen so much bloodshed between Mandalorians that she is done with that. She is tired of it. She doesn't want another Mandalorian to kill another Mandalorian. And, you know, Axe Woves he's released, and then he's, you know, now a zealot has control of the Darksaber, referencing Din. And then, really important line, he doesn't have a drop of Mandalorian blood.
Mudblood, yeah.
And so we see, you know, we saw in the Clone Wars, we saw in Rebels, there's no reference that the Mandalorians are strictly creedal. As far as other human species on other planets go, it's you're born there, you're a Mandalorian. And so it's a nation in that sense. And so Wove says this, and we get from the Children of the Watch when Grogu's inducted that no, it's not about that. It's about practicing
If
the
you
creed.
follow the code, yeah.
Exactly. Anyone can be a Mandalorian. And so a lot of people kind of took that to mean that was always the case, and that's not. I mean, that's a Children of the Watch thing. There are obviously, more than just wearing your helmet or not, differing views on what it means to be a Mandalorian. And so you have the diverging paths here. And Axe Woves, not only do we now learn that, oh, these guys don't believe that. And Bo-Katan, I think, convinces them. I don't think that there's what she says goes because of what happens next. But she says he's more Mandalorian, or he's just as Mandalorian as us, just as Mandalorian as our ancestors who did walk the way. Like, he is a Mandalorian, and we know that. Din Djarin is certainly a Mandalorian.
Right.
And so she tells them it's not about blood, it's about the creed. And then they say, well, you don't have the Darksaber, doesn't matter. And Din speaks up, and he doesn't try to give her the Darksaber. And he's like, it's yours. And she says, it's not a gift to be given, no matter how well-intentioned. And this is a callback to Bo having already experienced this.
Right, and the downfall, right? We spoke about in our earlier podcast when she went to Mandalore to rescue Din Djarin. She had a real bad attitude.
Yes.
You know, real short-tempered, real quippy, all this other stuff, real sarcastic, and that was a monument to her failure, right? And so now, she's been redeemed.
But let's talk about her failure for a second, for our listeners who may be unfamiliar about that.
Sure.
You know, if you haven't watched Rebels, you should, especially because Ahsoka's coming, and especially because it's phenomenal Star Wars. But Bo-Katan had the opportunity to rule. She was given the Darksaber by a Mandalorian named Sabine Wren in the first and second episode of season 4
who also didn't
of
earn
the
it.
Rebels. Yes, no, she didn't. Yeah, she just came across it. You're right.
Well,
she didn't earn it. Then she had it taken from her by Gar Saxon.
Yeah,
then
so
she
in
does
a
defeat
roundabout
Gar
way,
Saxon.
but
it
was never one from
less
Maul.
roundabout than what is about to happen in this episode.
Yeah.
And yeah, it wasn't one from Maul, but Maul had also had it stolen from him by Palpatine. So does that mean Palpatine is the rightful ruler of Mandalore? Because he was defeated by Darth Vader, and then he was defeated by Rey. So are Rey or Darth Vader the rightful leader of Mandalore? It gets complicated when you delve down these paths.
Yeah.
So for the logical leap, Sabine takes it from Gar Saxon. Sabine gives it to Bo-Katan.
Right, expressly.
And the Mandalorians rally around this. They're like, okay, she has the Darksaber, and it is a disaster. The
Night of
Empire
a-
destroys them.
Night of a Thousand Tears.
Night of a Thousand Tears, and so Bo-Katan is scarred. She will not accept it as a gift.
And then, legitimately, Moff Gideon is the rightful owner of the Darksaber,
Yes.
which we see at the end of season 1.
Right, that he
That's a
has
cool
it.
scene.
We don't see how he wins it, but we know that he's the rightful possessor. And so she has, but Bo-Katan doesn't believe that an outsider can even wield it. So even in Bo-Katan's eyes, Maul couldn't be the leader of Mandalore. 'Cause
Right.
He was an outsider. She has maybe since changed this, because in that episode, she's referencing an outsider. She doesn't say what an outsider is, whether Maul doesn't follow the creed or because he wasn't born on Mandalore. But she has at least now changed to where it's not about being born on Mandalore. It's just about the creed. But anyway, because of this line, we see that Bo-Katan can't accept the Darksaber. But Din says, you defeated the Spider Grievous creature on Mandalore, whatever that thing was that we don't have a name for. And now it had defeated me, so you now have the Darksaber because you rightfully defeated what defeated me. And so Bo-Katan does now have a rightful claim. Axe Woves is like, yep, that's true.
Yeah, it's verified by Axe Wolves. It wasn't just some. It was kind of convenient for the plot,
Right.
but
It's a little rules lawyery. Din
Yeah.
pulls out the rule book
Yeah.
on these Mandalorians.
yeah, and he hands off the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, and she ignites it. Very cool. So like,
This is going to mess up some infographics, though, because there's people out there who made infographics of, it went from Pre Vizsla to Maul to this person to this person to this person. They're going to have to put Spider Grievous guy in there. He was rightful ruler of Mandalore for a few hours. This guy, the only other than the Alamites, he was the only guy on Mandalore, and he was ruling it for the few hours.
Right.
So it's going to mess some of that up. But she is, like you said, cool shot there at the end.
The prop that they're using in this, in the cartoons, it looks real angular. The Darksaber looks, the sides, it looks kind of flat, real angular sides. The prop that they use in this is one of the first close-ups. We see it wielded a lot, but it has somebody's hand around it, right? And like it's dropped and it's only shown briefly. But this is the first where it's more than a few seconds showing it, and it looks almost exactly like the Galaxy's Edge thing that anyone can go buy
It's
and
got
I
the
own.
thin hilt. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's kind of rounded in this one, so very cool looking. I think I need to add to make it screen accurate, a little piece of like a belt hanger clip on it,
A little ring clip. Yeah. No, I gotcha. So I want to talk about this scene a little more. Because one, this was short. This was short, little meaty chunk, and it was an abrupt ending. But Bo has now got them all rallied around her. We'll talk about that in Always in Motion. But I wanted Bo to end up with the Darksaber. I've been saying that for a while. She has the leadership experience. That was where this was headed. We, before this season came out, we really thought it was going to be about a fight. We really thought that it was going to be her and Din against each other, and wrestling for it. And I'm happy that they're allies. I'm happy that Bo-Katan has become a clear protagonist of this series. But I want to ask, what was the point of giving Din the Darksaber? Do you have an answer to that? Because at the end of Season 2, it's a big deal that Din acquires the Darksaber. Bo-Katan can't have it. But we see him wield it in the Book of Boba Fett. He doesn't, grow with it. It's still cumbersome. It doesn't really make Din's character realize anything about himself. It doesn't kind of challenge Din's character in any way. He just wields it for a while and then gives it to Bo-Katan. And she was even on the ship when that battle went down. So I'm not saying lore-wise, why didn't Din give it to her? I understand that. But why was it written that way in the first place? That Din was going to have the Darksaber and it not matter for his character. Him just kind of waving it around and being cool for a few episodes.
Gosh, that's a really ponderous, deep question. And I'd almost venture to guess that has more to do with real life.
Like
before
Grogu coming back.
Grogu
like
coming
what
back.
we were talking about.
And so
they
in
rewrote
seasons
this
1 and
season.
2, there's no question of who the Mandalorian is.
Right.
If you're looking at it today, is the Mandalorian Bo-Katan Kryze or Din Djarin? In 2 weeks, is the Mandalorian going to be Din Djarin, Bo-Katan Kryze, or Grogu of
Right.
whatever, and or take that down into whatever season,
Mm-hmm.
We're having a lot of fun with Din Djarin. I'm having a lot of fun this season with Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan Kryze.
Yep.
She's an excellent character. Star Wars is about characters, and Filoni has made a bunch of really cool characters. And so we're getting a lot of stuff about this, but there was between the COVID pandemic, between shakeups at Disney, between fan reactions, between some heavy-handed leadership at Disney, right? There's or speculated heavy-handed leadership. I think there's a lot more real-life implications as to, because think about how you felt when you first saw the Darksaber. Think about how you felt at the end of season 2 when Din Djarin gained possession of the Darksaber. How cool that little fight was. How cool Giancarlo Esposito's character Moff Gideon was defeated. Luke Skywalker showing up, and he doesn't even care about the thing, right? Doesn't even mention it.
Right.
And so you think it'd be, a Jedi artifact or something, And like so many shows were supposed to split off, but stuff changed. And for better or for worse, who knows? And what I think it is, just off the cuff, is Mandalorian's Din Djarin's a badass. We want him to do badass stuff. People love the Darksaber. Let's give the Mandalorian a dark. And then there's also coupled what exists in Filoni's head about what he wants to do with Mandalore as an society, right? And then how Grogu ties in. We're looking at the 1/10 of a painted picture that Filoni wants to paint.
Right. I get it. I just, within the season and within this look, and like we talked about, that, there's speculation that originally Grogu was out of this season. He was written back in, that the reuniting was going to take place later in season 3, and maybe that would have changed it up some. But it feels like Din's character did not struggle with the Darksaber. He only used it, and he struggled physically. Like, he couldn't wield it very well, and that was clear.
In contrast to Bo-Katan, where she kicks butt.
She's an expert with it, yeah. But his character doesn't have any kind of struggles of, now I am the leader of Mandalore. The Children of the Watch just seem to not care. The Armorer is still in charge.
After the second episode of this season, he has no struggles.
Right, exactly. And so that's kind of that's my issue, is I just want to know what happened. Why couldn't we get the Darksaber? It feels like we took a lot of season 3 to get to where we are right now.
You're right.
And to get to somewhere that we were basically at the end of season 2. They set up a lot of conflict at the end of season 2 that I don't feel was realized in this season. Now, that is not a criticism of the pacing. That is not a criticism of the setup with Elia Kane's character, Dr. Pershing, Giancarlo Esposito as Moff Gideon. That's not a criticism of any of the Rangers of the New Republic stuff that's been wrapped in. I'm enjoying this season. I'm enjoying the direction we're going. This is strictly a criticism of the Darksaber plotline, of the season 3 handling of the Darksaber, that I don't think it went anywhere.
Yeah. I think it was supposed to kick butt with it, and we didn't do that this season at all. It's just a helpful tool from time to time.
He kicks butt in the Book of Boba Fett with it, and that's it.
Like in season 2 and then Book of Boba Fett, it was established that he was going to grow into its use almost.
Yeah, exactly.
And he never did that.
Yeah, and he didn't. It's just as heavy when he hits Dr. Ball as when he hits when he hits Paz when they're fighting each other in the Book of Boba Fett. And so that's just something I want to ponder. If you are listening to this and you've got a good reason for that, go drop it in the Discord, go drop it in the Facebook group, go DM us on Instagram. I want to hear some explanations. I want to know, because I'm welcoming some explanations. And, whether those explanations are real world, whether those explanations are in universe, I would like to know what you think the direction was for that. But, let's take a look at this episode as a whole. You loved it. It was a little meh for me. I would even be willing to say, I've thought about it all day, this may be my least favorite episode of the series. Not the season, but of the whole series. But I will say that out of 22 episodes of a show, if one didn't land 100% for me, that is not a condemnation of this awesome series. The Mandalorian is still hitting on all cylinders, and even looking back at the episode, I think nearly every individual scene was really good. It just strung together. It didn't do it for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's not a show in existence that bats 1,000, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's 22 episodes deep,
and
between 30 minutes to an hour. It's hard to
These
hit.
are deeply creative projects.
Right.
with so many people. We look at how many guest stars were in this one, and we don't know the answer to the question of were these people sought out or these people want to be part of Star Wars. We know that's true in some cases, right? We don't know about it in this one, but there are so many minds that want to touch Star Wars, us included, right? So, and that's true for every other show. In Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, a Saudi prince loved Star Trek so much that he got to be a guest star on one of those episodes.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Right? And so, and then all the writers, that's just actors and famous people, right? How many we've written fan fictions that we are so proud of for our RPG characters that I would love to send to Filoni and say, what do you think about this? Can I come be a writer for your show? I would tell my family that I'd move to Florida if it got to me and I got to write for Star Wars. And so that's just me. There are tens of thousands of other people who would change their lives to go exist in think of all the Disney influencers who visit. You scrolling through Instagram, and, look at the people who follow our page, and they live at Disney World somehow. Right. I don't know how, but they're showing their lightsabers and all this other stuff, having the times of their lives. And if I were given that opportunity, I might do that.
Right. Right.
But I mean, seriously, how cool would it be just to have your finger on the pulse of this stuff? And so my point is that this is and you can't bat 1,000. There's bad episodes of every Star Trek. There's bad episodes of Friends. There's bad episodes of The Breaking Bad. All this other stuff. There's bad episodes of Seinfeld. Come on.
I don't know about that one. I think Seinfeld might have bat 1,000. But no, I understand your point. I think, and that is the point, is that not Star Wars is so vast. They're putting out so much stuff. They came out the day that The Mandalorian came out. The day before, they came out with 2 books. They came out with a bunch of comic books. There's just no way that every Star Wars story is going to be for everybody. That's not possible. Like, it's not every Star Wars story is going to land with you. The universe is so vast, though, and it has so many stories that doesn't matter. That there can be the occasional miss, and you can still love Star Wars. You can still love the series of whatever the miss was in. You can still love the characters that were involved in the miss, and it's not a miss to everybody. It's a miss to me. It's not a miss to you. It's just whatever it is. You have to understand that if it's not the Star Wars that you like, go take a look at the Star Wars that you like. Go look for the Star Wars that you love, because it's there. There's a reason that you're a Star Wars fan. There's a reason you listen to this podcast. And if the thing that week was not yours, just wait. Where we live, we have a saying that if you don't like the weather, wait around 5 minutes and it'll change. If you didn't like this Star Wars, wait 5 minutes. You're going to get a story that you're going to like.
Right.
And so that's regardless of how either of us felt about this episode, that's an important perspective that you have to keep in place.
That's correct.
But let's move on to our Always in Motion segment, because we're going to talk about the near future of Star Wars and the near future of The Mandalorian and where we think this series is going to take place. So right now, it's Always in Motion.
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
All right, Colin, we had a little bit of meat there at the end that is really the big setup for the next few episodes. I want to know what you think. I have a few notes, and I have a few things that I think are going to happen, but there's a lot of information that we can glean. We don't have a trailer to rely on anymore. So what do you see coming down the pipe for the next 2 episodes, for the penultimate episode and for the ultimate episode of season 3?
So obviously what's going to happen next is they're going to go and try and, I don't know if recolonize is the right word, but retake.
They keep saying retake,
implying
that someone has it.
Yeah, retake Mandalore. Well, so they're going to go retake Mandalore. That's obvious. They have their fleet. They have the personnel. They are united.
They definitely have the personnel. They've got like 300 Mandalorians now.
So, I mean, it's just a matter of going there and deciding to rebuild. So they're going to show up there. That'll be the first part of the next episode. And then somebody's going to take issue with that. Somebody who is very angry at the Mandalorians and does not want them living there. And that's obviously Moff Gideon.
Yep.
And because he has a very powerful Imperial presence somehow.
Right. And he's, Giancarlo Esposito's done so much promotion for this season. We know he's in this season. But it's, I'm like, where is he? Is he safe? Is he all right? Because we're getting down to the wire, and it's going to be a huge entrance. I guarantee it. They teased it last episode. Didn't even mention it this episode. I'll bet it's either at the end of next episode. I bet it's at the end of next episode that we really get it. But it's going to be big comeback. They're doing something huge. I think someone's dying. Something's blowing up. Someone's getting kidnapped. Something like that is happening.
And then the obvious is Grogu. I'd be willing to bet money that towards the end of this next episode, Grogu gets shot. He has the rondelle. We're going to think casual viewers will have no idea because this was an episode ago. Mm-hmm. But you heard it here first. He's gonna hit. He's gonna fall.
Yeah, that rondelle's a total Chekhov's gun.
Yeah,
we know it's gonna get used. It's gonna get used.
Something will happen there. A real tearjerker type scene. You're not fooling us, Filoni.
Right.
And
speaking
something
of
happened
Filoni,
with the Mythosaur too. Yeah.
Speaking of Filoni, he is the one who helped Favreau write the next episode. He only helped on 2. He helped on episode 3 where we saw all the Coruscant arc, and now he's helped on this one. They usually not the Coruscant arc, my mistake, where Grogu had his flashback to Order 66, Kelleran Beck. And they bring in Filoni when they need to tie into the Clone Wars, to Rebels, or to get Order 66 right. We've already got Order 66. We might get another flashback. I think that's on the table.
Yeah, I don't think we'll get it, but I want to see what happens to Kelleran Beck.
I know. I think it's
there's
a next
so much
season
speculation about, did they go to Naboo? Did they go here? Did they go? Where do they go?
Right.
So
yeah, I don't know how they're going to fill it in. I think they'll fill it next season, but we don't know. But it could be that. It could be Clone Wars tie-in. It could be a Rebels tie-in. I'm not even willing to speculate anymore because the last Dave Filoni episode, we did not see that coming. That was out of left field. It's directed by Rick Famuyiwa, who directed the first episode of the season. Awesome director. He did a great job on the first episode of this season, and so I'm confident the next 2 episodes are going to be out of the park. I think the next episode, we're going to see some early in the episode internecine conflict between the Mandos, between the Axe Woves faction and the Children of the Watch. Just a little bit of grating right there while they get used to each other. Paz is probably going to get up in somebody's face. I wouldn't even be surprised if we get Paz versus Koska Reeves or Paz versus Axe Woves. Just a little bit of conflict there. It'll get resolved. This is just Bo-Katan bringing in her friends from college to meet her friends from high school.
She's a uniter, not a divider.
Exactly. And so she'll be the one that kind of, hey, let's break it up. But I think something's going to do a little bit of grading right there. But that by the end of next episode, by the end of the penultimate episode, we'll have the conflict is, they put aside their differences to deal with this conflict, which is almost positively Moff Gideon and the Empire. And then something that I think you're going to be very happy about is my prediction that the next episode or the episode after is going to result in a big space battle. Cormac fighters, TIE interceptors.
Yep.
Big one. Light cruiser, probably a Star Destroyer. I mean, I'm willing to bet that it's a big space battle.
So I'm looking forward to that. It's kind of self-explanatory, right? With what we've seen. Let me ask you this. Out of left field, but we'll circle back around, I promise. What season of Star Trek are you on?
I am on season 2 of The Next Generation. So I'm nowhere near down the pipe.
Yeah, well, between season 3 and 4 is a big deal. And we really need to have a big talk but that leads me to this question is, given the pacing of this season, and we know who the big bad's fixing to be, right? Is it going to end with resolution or a cliffhanger?
I think that they're almost certainly going to have to end on a cliffhanger, not because they've set up a bunch of threads that need to be tied together, but because season 1 and 2 ended on a firm Gideon defeat. He was defeated. He wasn't down. He wasn't dead, but he was defeated. He was, at first, crashed TIE fighter, Empire driven off of Navarro. Then the second one, it's captured by the New Republic, Darksaber's gone. I think that season 3 is the Empire Strikes Back of The Mandalorian. I think we're ending season 3 not just on a cliffhanger, but on a down note cliffhanger. Something happens in the end of this season where Bo-Katan's down and out. She's captured by the Empire. I don't think it's going to be Grogu again because we already got that. But someone, maybe Din, is captured by the Empire. something happens. There's one, I think there'll be an after credit scene with Thrawn. My money is certainly on that. I do not think he's showing up in anything but an after credit scene, or an Ahsoka after credit scene, or an Ezra after credit scene. But that the meat of the Mandalorian is going to be a big Moff Gideon win somehow.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, because there's so much to wrap up and so much stuff that's been telegraphed. You know, the rondell with Grogu, Grogu's first words possibly. We haven't seen that in several episodes. There's been no breadcrumbs for that. The Mythosaur, if that's going to be a factor somehow, and like, obviously they're not going to go to Mandalore and be happily ever after, right? That's naive, because her castle was bombed by bombers and attacked by all those interceptors. So there's a major Imperial power who doesn't like them, that there's going to be a conflict.
Right.
It's just where. And it's, you know, it's not like the Pirates where they show up in one episode and then resolved in one other. They're a cast off antagonist, right?
Yes.
This is a major antagonist who will not pull his punches, and it's going to be a big deal. So I don't know what we're going to see. I kind of hope you're wrong, because optimistic sense, but,
right.
But reality and history says otherwise.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I'm right. I think you're right in that I hope that's not the case, but I do think that's what's coming. I would be willing to say I think Ahsoka is its own story. I don't think it's going to be Mandalorian 3.5, but he might be in this series in 1 or 2 episodes, so we might get a little update on what's going on. Or it might tie in with the Thrawn thing, but I definitely think we're gonna have at least a few months of trepidation.
Last thing in this Always in Motion, what is the other? We've had 2 guest stars from Rebels. We had the Purgils and we had Zeb. Mm-hmm. Do you have any other? I know who that always at the top of your mind when we talk about Rebels.
Sure.
Any other Rebels cameos in these last 2 episodes?
Yeah, so everyone says Sabine, and I think that's a fine answer. She is the Mandalorian in Rebels, but I just think the lower hanging fruit is Finn Rao. I think Finn Rao is easier to get because we know Sabine's coming in Ahsoka. They might want to make that, kind of wait and bottle all that up. Finn Rao's an easy grab. I don't see how they'd introduce him this late. I also don't see how they'd introduce Sabine this late. But I think either one of them, we're not going to get Hera Syndulla. The perfect opportunity to introduce Hera would be in the New Republic. We know she's part of the New Republic this time. That's not who we're getting. And we've gotten Ahsoka. I don't think we're going to get her again. I think they're going to wait for her series to get her. And so my guesses are Finn Rao and Sabine. Do you have anyone out of left field that is not that?
Obviously, Chopper.
We already got Chopper. We got him in Rogue One.
He needs to be in this too.
Right. Chopper doesn't go anywhere without Hera is my assumption.
Okay.
And so I think that we'll only get him with Hera. But yeah, no, I got you. So, Colin, I think that comfortably wraps up Always in Motion. We're really excited. We're sad that this series is coming to an end, but we're really excited because it's only 2 episodes left, and we know that they're going to ramp this up big time.
Yeah, and we're having a special about this, right?
We are. Yeah, we're going to talk about that near the end, but we do have a special.
I'm excited.
We're talking about. It is exciting. For now, we are going to jump right into HoloNet news because we've got a lot of HoloNet news to talk about.
You made the HoloNet.
Colin, our first news story that we are going to talk about for the HoloNet news is a sad one. Angie Mayhew, wife of Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca in the original trilogy in Revenge of the Sith. Angie Mayhew has passed away. And, Star Wars fans are really devastated by this because Angie Mayhew was super involved in the fan community. She has been involved for years with fans, just as Peter Mayhew was. And it's very sad to see that she's passed, but, she's finally back with Peter.
Yes, and most recently we talked about her because she was in the news. She donated a bunch of his documents of when he signed on to be Chewbacca. And they're at the Holocron store in Arlington, Fort Worth.
In Fort Worth.
Yeah. So I guess you can go see those. That's pretty neat. And I guess she lived in the area or something. Knew those people?
Yeah, I think they lived in Texas. From what I understand is that they had lived in Texas. They were really active with the 501st Legion. They were active with the Holocron store. They held toy drives around Christmas time at the Holocron store. They were really, really involved in charitable causes and in Star Wars fan groups. It's devastating to hear of her passing.
Yeah, and so another soul is lifted up, right? I mean,
right,
and we're all glad to have known her. Glad to, and she embodied what Star Wars means to so many people.
Yes, no, they got the fans more than anybody else could have. I would venture to say, and so it is sad to hear of her passing. But like you said, another soul has been lifted up. We have some more news to cover here. We have a little bit of different news. We have some shakeup at Lucasfilm. Not shakeup at Lucasfilm, I should say. We have some news about Lucasfilm. For people who are Solo fans, this is probably a little bit of a bright light, but it's still in rocky waters. I loved Solo. Big Solo.
Yeah, I watched it just recently. Very
right.
good.
Good movie. I mean, I think there was some hate that it got. It didn't perform in the box office as a lot of people think it should have, but I thought it was a great Star Wars. And so Donald Glover, who played a phenomenal Lando Calrissian, for many people was the highlight of the movie. Even people who didn't like the movie thought he did an awesome job. He confirmed in a recent interview that he's still in talks with Lucasfilm. He didn't directly cite the Lando TV show, but that's really all it could be. Was the Lando TV show was announced very, very early on when they were announcing the first Star Wars TV shows, and it and A Droid Story are the two that they have not confirmed have been canceled since that announcement. I would be pretty comfortable to say that A Droid Story is canceled, but I think Lando is still in production. Or not still in production. It hasn't begun production, but I think it's still in talks based on what Donald Glover said.
Yeah, and as we've discussed, time is the best thing for a Star Wars project.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And here we go. I mean, this needs to be done. It's the lowest hanging fruit.
Right.
Donald Glover's Lando is the best idea.
Right.
They just need the right writers and then write this and write that.
You're right. And we've seen... Go ahead. Sorry.
It'd be I want to see what he's up to.
I know.
So
I love Donald Glover as an actor. He's really good, and he did a great Lando. Lando, any time period, is going to be super fun, but especially before the Rebellion would be such a good place to get to see what he was up to, because it's just going to be a fun story. Just following the gambler around the galaxy is going to be really cool.
Swashbuckler just doing all this stuff.
Yeah,
man, that'd
exactly.
be fun.
And so I really want to see it. I hope that these talks become more than that. And I would really like for this show to be a spiritual successor to Solo. I would love for them to bring Alden Ehrenreich back. I'd love to pick up the plot lines that were left dead at the end of Solo with Darth Maul and Kira and what Han and Chewbacca are doing in those years before A New Hope. I mean, there's a lot of ground to cover right here that I think.
Yeah, lots of original stories. Good opportunity there.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're totally right. I mean, they could just adapt the Lando novels. They're a little campy and goofy, kind of like this episode of The Mandalorian, but I mean, I would totally welcome that. They were really good books. And so I think that this is really exciting. I'd like to see it. There's a hashtag that was trending. It trends every now and then. Hashtag Make Solo 2 happen. We know that Lucasfilm has listened to hashtags in the past. They revived the Clone Wars after they canceled it, after hashtag Save the Clone Wars. So maybe if Make Solo 2 gets enough traction going, that can roll the ball downhill to get us this Lando TV show.
I'd love it.
So the next bit of news that we have, we're going to wrap up on a piece of news that I think you'll be most excited about, and that I think our listeners will be most excited about. But for this piece of news, we're going to talk about the summer sets for 2023 for LEGO. They are out of this world. Like, I'd venture to say maybe the best string of LEGO sets since like summer 2005, like Revenge of the Sith sets. These LEGO sets are awesome, and there's a lot of them to talk about. And so we're going to briefly go down the list, and I want to just get quick takes on each set.
I saw the Venerator earlier today. I think that's on my list.
Man.
It's such a cool set.
It's so expensive. I don't have a UCS set, and I want one, and this is a cool one. But let's roll through. A Republic gunship, about 1,000 pieces, $140.
Yeah, that looks cool.
And so we don't have any art for it yet. We don't know what it's going to look like. But with that size of set, with that cost of set, I really, really think that we're going to get something super cool. We just got the UCS Republic gunship. People were not super pleased with it because of its price point was expensive, not near as expensive as most UCS sets, but because it only came with 2 minifigures. This set, I would venture, will come with many, many minifigures like the old Republic gunship set came with.
Yeah. Very cool.
The next set that they introduced was a clone swamp speeder. I'm sure some people are going to be excited for this one. This one's more probably the army builder set. This is probably the one that comes with 4 minifigs and that you're just going to try to build out your army.
The art has the Ahsoka face painting on the clone.
Right, yeah, so we're getting this information from 9 to 5 Toys, and so since there's no official art released for any of these sets
this is all
yet,
speculation.
this is all speculation
Okay.
on what it'll look like. So they have that advertised right there.
Wouldn't that be neat?
It would be super cool for a 5.0 first pack or the Ahsoka pack. The next one is really cool. It's an Ahsoka shuttle, and so we know it's coming from the Ahsoka TV show. 599 pieces, $70. We have the minifigures confirmed that come with it. It is Ahsoka, Sabine Wren, and Hui Yang. And Hui Yang was the droid that accompanied the younglings to Ilum when they built their first lightsabers
nice.
in that Clone Wars set.
That's awesome.
So we've seen pictures of Hui Yang in those, grainy cell phone photo pictures of the Ahsoka trailer from 2022 Celebration. He was voiced by David Tennant. David Tennant is my favorite British actor. He's awesome in Harry Potter. He's good in Doctor Who. He's great in Jessica Jones.
Right.
I cannot wait to get this set. I'm super excited that Hui Yang's in this.
That's cool.
It's really, really cool. We're also getting a new Ghost. Only one Ghost was ever made when Star Wars Rebels was coming out. It is a super expensive Lego set. It's highly coveted. This one will likely be the same. So it's a new Ghost. It does not come with the Rebels crew. It comes with who we are going to see in the Ahsoka series, which it's Hera, Chopper, and then 2 characters that are pretty out of left field. It is Jason Syndulla, her and Kanan's son, who at this point has got to be in a preteen to a teenager.
That's cool.
We posted on our Twitter recently a joke fan cast of Michael Cera playing Jason Syndulla. And then Corey, the Mon Cal inventor of the B-Wing that we saw in one episode or in 2 episodes.
That was
Rebels.
I love that episode arc. That was so cool.
So that guy's coming back for the Ahsoka series, apparently.
That's cool.
And so those are the 4 minifigures included with that $160 set.
That'll be the Ghost is such a cool ship.
I know, isn't it? And Han even remarks in Solo that it's best ship you can have is the VCX 100.
It's so spacious.
Huge.
Has
Yeah, it's a
quarters. has a shuttle that you can dock on the back.
Complement
Come
of
on.
weapons. Exactly. So the second to last set we'll talk about is the announced UCS Venator, like you had mentioned. It is a $650 price point. It's going to have 5,374 pieces.
Oh my gosh!
I think it's also only going to come with 2 minifigures. It's going to come with a clone trooper. I think Rex. It's actually coming with Phase 2 Captain Rex, and an exclusive Admiral Yularen minifigure.
Huh.
Which will be, it's neat. That's certainly, I mean, it makes sense. It's his Venator.
This makes me wonder if we're going to get a live action end, like where she's fighting with Rex and the other clones.
Well, they've said, so leaks have said, and if you're not a leak person, skip like a minute ahead. We're not going to dwell on this very long. Speculation for the Ahsoka show, and leaks have said that they are going to recreate the Darth Vader versus Ahsoka fight from Rebels in live action with Hayden Christensen.
Gracious. Is Hayden doing that?
Yes, yeah, Hayden is confirmed for the show.
That is the coolest scene one of the coolest scenes in the whole series.
You're right. So it'd be very cool to see. And then the very last set that we are going to talk about is the new UCS X-Wing. It looks really good. I saw it on Instagram just today. It did not come out with the announcement. It's Red 5. It's just, they've made a lot of Lego X-Wings. I mean, I think we're up into we're definitely into double digits. I think we're comfortably into the teens with Lego sets that are X-Wings, but I'm always going to welcome another one. It's super exciting.
Yeah, X-Wing is the most iconic ship. If you ask people what ship would you want to fly personally from Star Wars, 85% are going to pick an X-Wing.
Right, and the other 15 will pick the TIE Fighter.
I'd pick the Millennium Falcon.
Right, sure, the Millennium Falcon. That's true. You're right. Can't forget that one. So that wraps up our Lego news. And so we'll get into the last bit of really exciting news is some Star Wars YouTubers recently got some first looks at Survivor. They got their hands on the controller. They got to play it. And we've summarized what they've said. We've summarized what a few YouTubers have said. Azataru, Eckert's Ladder, Battlefront Updates. We just kind of looked at their YouTube channels. We don't want to not source them. And so they've said that the combat didn't change too much, which is good because the combat system was well received. Some people wanted some updates to it, so some people might be a little upset. But we do have 2 new lightsaber stances. We've got 5 lightsaber stances now. And I don't know exactly what the 5th one is. It's the 3 from the original game: dual wield, double blade, single blade. And then we know that it's the crossguard lightsaber added, but I'm not sure what the 5th one is. And that might just be because I wasn't listening or I haven't noticed, but I could not figure that one out.
Pong Krell, dual wield, double-ended lightsabers.
Yeah, double wield, dual wield. You're right. So that was exciting, and we know the changes with the AI combat are coming, where you're going to have an AI partner play with you, and so all of that's exciting. The coolest part is that you start at the beginning of the game with the 3 forms that you learned from Fallen Order, and what I learned today was you start with all the force powers that you learned from Fallen Order.
Nice.
So, you know, a lot of these game sequels, they take you back. They put you back at ground zero every time because they don't want to think up a whole new skill tree. But this one is, your skill tree exists. You have all of the powers that you learned in that last game. So it's a brand new skill tree building on those powers.
That's awesome.
Really
That's going to
cool.
be so fun.
I thought that was super cool. Go ahead.
The first game was so fun, all the puzzles you had to solve.
Yes.
And this game's just going to build on that.
Yeah, they did.
So
They
fun.
said there's Jedi temple puzzles. It's gonna be good. The open world is more seamless. It's much bigger. Bless you. The open world is more seamless. It's larger. There are 7 new planets.
Yeah,
to
Coruscant being one.
Coruscant
Thank goodness.
being one.
That's
Kobo,
gonna be
we
so
know,
fun.
is the home base planet. And then I don't think we know anything about the other 5 planets.
Anything from the book? Battle Scars?
I'm not sure if there's anything from the book or not. We do have confirmation that in the trailer you get that brown creature that looks like a Wampa. It is a Wampa. That is
Nice.
confirmation that there are somehow other Wampas around the galaxy that are not just snow Wampas. So that's cool. And that you fight a Rancor really early on in the game.
That'll be fun.
Finally, customization is massive. You and I talked a little bit about this just to each other, but it's dozens of new hairstyles. You can change the shirt, the overshirt, the pants, the lightsaber, BD1, beard, like everything. I mean, Cal is crazy customizable.
Yeah, the mullet one was the one I saw.
Yeah, that
scroll
one got
through.
passed around the internet. You can see, Cal looks like he's ready to crack open a natty light. He's got the long flowing mullet. Yeah, it's they've got a lot of hairstyles, and it's called the mullet in the game.
Yeah,
And
that's fun.
it is exciting. It's cool that we're going to get such customization, because that may have been the biggest complaint about Fallen Order was, you didn't really have
You
any
can change
customization.
jackets.
Yeah, you can change ponchos, and I didn't even like the ponchos, so I'm happy to see that we've now got the change on outside. But, Colin, that wraps up our HoloNet news segment. Lots of really cool news for us to talk about. But we're going to roll right into our Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, Colin, what was your Star Wars moment of the week?
Yeah, this one, I did a rewatch of The Force Awakens. We had a big discussion off podcast about it. And, of course, we've read Shadows of the Sith since the last time I watched it. And I really wanted to pay close attention to the Rey character and understand just aspects of that. And what I realized after reading that book, I listened to the audiobook, so we can have that debate of if I read it or not, right? Whatever. But after listening to that book, it changes the Rey character in a more drastic way. Her heritage a little bit more. It makes her more genuine. Especially it's really easy to fall into a trap of listening to people who are negative about the movie and have that, influence your opinion somehow. But if you take an objective step back, read Shadows of the Sith, learn about Ochi Bestoon, learn about who Rey's parents were, learn about why she was left on Jakku, and what motivates that character to return to Jakku. There's a scene. What's Maz Kanata's planet where they're at?
Takodana.
Takodana?
Yeah.
Okay. So they land there, and Han Solo offers her a job. She
Offers Rey a job.
offers Rey a job. Yeah. Offers Rey a job, and Rey is kind of taken aback, and she's like, I have to go back to Jakku. My parents could turn up at any minute, and I don't want to be away. And she's been there for, 20 years?
Yeah, long time. Really long time.
And so, it's kind of a fictional trope thing that, most people move on after that amount of time. They figure something else out to do, but not Rey, and that's really cool in a sense. And then so she hasn't had a choice. She's become very competent at what she does to gain rations from her not dad, de facto dad, guardian, I guess would be the right term, Unkar Plutt, right? And she has this lonely existence. And then Kylo Ren even remarks on it. She's looking for her dad, and Han Solo is a replacement for that. And so this is her first taste of somebody who cares about her. Han Solo offers her a job, and she's just like taken aback by that. And you see that without the context of Shadows of the Sith, and it's just another scene in a movie. With the weight of that book, Shadows of the Sith, it changes this scene. It was way more emotional, why she cared about going back to Jakku, what it meant that Han Solo offered her a job, and so on subsequent scenes throughout the rest of this trilogy. And it's a big deal. Again, read or listen to Shadows of the Sith, and then rewatch The Force Awakens. It will change the movie for you.
Right. Do you think we talk about Shadow of the Sith enough on this podcast? Because I don't.
I don't. The characters are really good. We've had interaction with the author on Twitter.
I know. Adam Christopher knocked it out of the park.
And especially considering some of the other books that we've read recently.
Right.
This is it stands apart.
It's amazing. No, it's good. I mean, we do talk about Shadow of the Sith. We've talked about it in a lot of podcasts, but I just always want to hit that it is one of the best canon books that you can read. It's so good.
When my kids come to their own and want to watch Star Wars, I'm going to say, you must read this book.
Right.
What was this in the 2000s? They had some since we had the sequels and since we had the original trilogy and the prequels, they had some recut it. Oh, watch it in this order.
Oh yeah, the Machete order, which I totally disagree with because it gets rid of the Phantom Menace, and the Duel of the Fates is so important to Anakin's character. But anyway, go ahead.
Right. Well, it's a different way of thinking about stuff.
Right.
This is a machete-esque or scalpel-esque.
Right.
Consume Shadows of the Sith and then watch The Force Awakens. You will care a lot more about Rey's character.
Yep.
You care more about how the other characters interact in this.
Right. And I was a fan of the sequels, and I was a fan of The Rise of Skywalker and The Force Awakens, and it changed my perspective on it. It changes people who didn't like those movies at all's perspective on it. Like, it's just as a Star Wars fan, you're doing yourself a disservice if you have not read or listened to Shadow of the Sith.
Yes. So that is my Star Wars moment of the week, and it is it's a really good one.
Good. Yeah, I'm very happy to hear that it was so good for you. So my Star Wars moment of the week is pretty unique this week. I put a question on our Twitter about a week and a half ago about what do people think was the greatest era to be a Star Wars fan. Was it in 2015 when all the buzz was around The Force Awakens? Was it when the prequels were coming out? Was it, when we were getting the new Jedi Order and a plethora of books? But we talked about all different kinds of eras. I said, and I have no firsthand experience of this, but I thought maybe it was 80 to 83, just sitting on the edge of your seat of the cliffhanger of The Empire Strikes Back. But we had a person that we interact with on Twitter, a loyal fan of ours. He goes by Rural Farm Boy on Twitter. He's an avid Star Wars podcast listener. I mean, his Twitter feed is full of Star Wars podcast listening, but he chooses to listen to us, and we really appreciate it. Well, he sent us an audio message, and I thought it was so good that I wanted to play it on the podcast for you and for our listeners so we could talk about his perspective on what the greatest time to be a Star Wars fan was. And so, I'm just going to play that raw audio. It's about 3 minutes long right now.
How do, Colin and Carter? This is your podcast friend, listener, and Twitterverse friend, Rural Farm Boy. Or, as most pod friends and some YouTube friends call me, is just shorten it down to keep from rolling over all the R's, is RFB. Sitting here on a nice sunny Pennsylvania Sunday afternoon, rolling through my pods playlist as I do, and fiddling around in the Twitterverse. And I did happen, remember, I come across one of your posts while I was doing my daily listening, and I want to say, I'm guessing it's Carter that does your Twitterverse. asking the question is, when do you suppose that was, or I would say is, the best time to be a Star Wars fan? And that was a really great thread to read through. And I thought, well, because we all see and understand Star Wars different. And I can tell you, I can remember a time, I come from a time when I can remember when there weren't no Star Wars. I'm an original generation fan. So my opinion on that would be, it's always been a great time to be a Star Wars fan. I lived through the dark times, and that was also a time where, even as I was when I was a kid, being kind of geeky, nerdy was not took upon very well, accepted very well. But very different to nowadays. I can even remember in the mid and later 90s, right before the special editions were coming, and I had other hobbies, and Star Wars was starting to really come back around in the way of stories being told in films. Yeah, from then on, clean up to now has always been, every next story that to me is something new or different that weren't told in ones before it. And they're still doing it. Now they're giving us stories into places that we've always wondered whatever happened here. Now we're doing that. We're getting that in two different places. The Rise of the Empire, which is one of my favorites, being a former 501st Legion member, and Post Empire, which is just really neat, fun stuff. For me, it's always been a great time to be a fan, and it'll be around here long after I'm not, and long after Yun's too. So that's my thoughts and my opinion on when or was it a great time to be a Star Wars fan? Just hang on, because there's stuff coming that we know what it is, but with not much in a way what the stories are going to be. Some of that I've heard things. That's all I'll say. But yes, just hang on, because the ride's we're going to be making so many jumps to hyperspace. It's just going to be nuts. So looking forward to next episode, boys. See what you got. Come talk Star Wars to me. Spend the day with me. Just like all my other pod friends. I'm glad to have you along in my ears. And I got to shout out and thank Mandalorian Mark, our Twitterverse friend up there in Boston. Weren't for his post, I don't know that I might have found you boys, and I'm dang glad I did. You got a permanent spot in my library. And folks will know whenever I gave you a listen. Maybe you'll pick up more new listeners, because that's why I do what I do. Because you do what you do. So until next episode, boys, may the force be with you. See you on the radio.
So, that was Rural Farm Boy's take on that question. First off, if you guys have takes on that question, hit the Discord, hit the Facebook group, DM us on Instagram. We want to hear, do you disagree with Rural Farm Boy? Do you agree with Rural Farm Boy? But, Colin, what do you think about his take that every era might be the best era?
I don't disagree. I mean, I think personally, we live in the best of times just in general. There's a lot to point fingers at about this person doing this or that, or conflict here and there. But, I mean, yes, that's true, and we all need to improve, but that's kind of what Star Wars teaches us to throughout every moment of Star Wars. And there's always something to fight for. There's always hope, right? And in a new hope. In the case of this stuff, I can go on a big long rant about hope and this and that. And, I hope my gas doesn't run out. Well, that's kind of silly. You should have gone and filled up, right?
Right.
But, if you're hoping you get that job, or you're hoping that all the work that you've done comes to fruition, that's a really good hope to have. And as the rebels hope that their work succeeds in defeating the Empire. And all these other things that carry out throughout. Yes, I agree with that. Me personally, I really
you never
like
answered the question. What is the best time?
Yeah, I never did answer it. It's too heady for me. I'm too busy. Gosh, it seems kind of too easy to answer. The every era is the best era, but for me, it's the original trilogy. Mm-hmm. I was a little kid, obviously wasn't alive or just very young when those movies came out.
Right.
But it was still like this very new thing that being a child and observing all these, they're memes today. There were memes for me then when I was a child. So it's a huge nostalgia factor for me that, no, I am your father. That's the most iconic scene for me.
Yep.
Han Solo and the Carbonite, all of the whole cast going to rescue Han Solo in Jabba's palace. It ranks up there for me personally as one of the best movies of all time, those scenes. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's the best. And in the context of there's like the sequels, the prequels was the next ones I got to experience. And they're their own thing. They're different movies. And then you have the sequels. They're their things. They're different movies.
Right.
It's kind of like the first time I drank a Dr. Pepper is never the same as the second time, right? And so that's what it is for me. The first time was the best time.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's a great take. And Rural Farm Boy saying anytime's best time. I think that's true because you can always find good Star Wars in every era. We're living in a great time for Star Wars right now because we're getting so much of it all the time. And so it's, we really appreciate him sharing that perspective. We enjoyed putting that question out there. It was really fun to talk about. And so I'm happy that it sparked this good discussion and insightful discussion from you and a lot of other people. So it was really good. Speaking of the best time to be a Star Wars fan, Celebration is this weekend. We're releasing this podcast on Wednesday, April 5th. Celebration starts on Friday, April 7th. It's going to go for 4 days, Friday through Monday. It's in London. The biggest news, the Lucasfilm Showcase, is going to be on Friday. Then they've got the Ahsoka panel, where they're almost certainly going to show a trailer. I bet they even screen a little bit of it for the people there.
Right.
And so we're going to have a ton to talk about. You and I are going to cover the news just like we did last year. Our very first special of this podcast was a news episode. We're going to do that again. Our fifth special is going to be a HoloNet news episode where we're going to break down all the news that comes out of Celebration, from films all the way down to toys and everything in between. And so we're really excited. We had a blast doing it last time. And we wish we were at Celebration, but we're going to make sure that for you guys, you loyal listeners, that we're going to bring all of the Celebration news to you. And we're going to be, we're going to be giving takes on Instagram and Twitter as much as we can and talking about it as much as we can.
We'll distill it down to the best parts. You can cut to the shaft.
Exactly. We absolutely will. And so we're really excited about that. But speaking of conventions, we have some other super exciting news that I want to let Colin tell you guys about.
April 22nd is Yellow City Comic Con here in where we live in Amarillo, Texas. It's a fabulous local con. Katie O'Brien, who you might know from this season of Mandalorian, is going to be there. We tried to get to interview her. She's too famous for us.
Sure.
Right. She's got a career to make, right?
Right.
But we're gonna go get something signed by her. I don't know what. Piece of paper.
I'm getting some Mandalorian poster printed, I think.
Yeah,
for
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But most importantly, we have a panel there where we're going to recap and everything about this season, a capstone special podcast. Mm-hmm. And this is in a prime period of the day. 3:00 is when I think we're going to be on
Saturday, April 22nd.
And so this is going to be the best one yet. We've done a couple of these things. Mm-hmm. We've had some attendees. This one's in the prime of the day. It's after the end of the season of The Mandalorian.
Right.
This, leave us a question on Discord. We'll answer it. Mm-hmm. Shoot us a DM on Twitter. I don't know how all this fancy technology works sometimes, but we will answer your question as best we can if we don't already cover it.
Right.
And so submit your questions. Show up to the con, and this one's going to be fun.
We're going to have a blast. We're live streaming it on Twitch and YouTube, just like we did the last one. We are super stoked. Like you said, we're talking about Mandalorian Season 3. All of our perspectives, all our takes on it. We're talking about Mandalorian Season 4 speculation. We'll have plenty to talk about there. Yeah. We're going to have all the little clues from Celebration that we'll need to really build on some speculation. It's going to be a good time.
Yeah, and these last two episodes are going to encompass so many things, right, that it warrants a whole special episode, probably for just these last two.
Yep. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're not going to want to miss it. Tune in live. It'll also be posted here when we're done with it live, so look for it on the 22nd or maybe the 23rd. But we are really, really excited to bring it to you guys. And if you can make it in person, come in person. And if you want to make sure that you have a front row seat, check out our Patreon, because that's one of the rewards on one of our tiers is when you get the Jedi Master level, you're going to be able to get a front row seat at all of our live events. And our live events keep increasing in number. We keep having more of them. And so,
as is the podcast, as is the Instagram page, we're taking off.
Right. Yeah. We're really enjoying engaging with the community. We've loved doing the podcast, the Instagram, the Twitter, all of it. We love engaging with everybody. I would say, Colin, I would definitely say the highlight of this is engaging with all the other Star Wars fans that we get to.
Yeah. It's such a diverse group. We interviewed a Mandalorian at Amicon.
Mm-hmm.
We had a really big, long discussion with the 501st Legion at LubbockCon.
Right.
There's no telling what's going to be. We get to run into Katie O'Brien at this one.
Right, exactly.
Oh, my goodness.
And we get to, like we said, we have the best fans in the world. We love and appreciate y'all who listen to this podcast. The community we're building is a positive Star Wars community in that everyone's opinions are welcome. You don't have to like everything. You can be a fan of this or a fan of that, and we have open dialogue. We love for people to talk about it. We love talking Star Wars. We personally love every aspect of Star Wars, and so we are always open to talk about everything Star Wars with everybody. Our Discord's growing. You can find that at the link in our Instagram bio, and the link of this and the bio of this podcast. Our Facebook group is taking off. It's exploding. That's Star Wars Station Cantina on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at starwars.station. You can find us on Twitter, SW_station. Twitter is so much fun to run. I love being able to post the hot takes on there and opinions. I'm reading through Cataclysm right now, and I just posted what I kind of thought about with Grogu's age from reading a Star Wars novel. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so insightful.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. But yeah, reading about Yaddle's age in Cataclysm and just kind of doing the math, you kind of figure out how Grogu's going to be maturing soon.
Hopefully they don't do these things without thinking it through, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's all connected. And so it's a lot of fun. We want you guys to come and engage with us there. Keep listening to the podcast. Share it with your friends. Be sure to rate and review us. A 5-star rating is the number one thing you can do for us. It helps us grow, helps us get in that algorithm, helps us expand. Also tell your friends, Mandalorian's wrapping up. You're going to be talking about it at the water cooler. Be sure to let people know, hey, you should listen to what Carter and Colin have to say about this. You like The Mandalorian. And then, very soon, at the end of this month, we are going to be recording our first episode of our Star Wars RPG. We are going to have me, Colin, a couple friends, sit down, play a long-form live play podcast through our new RPG. We've been posting backstories, pictures on our Patreon, on our social media. Check those out. They are available to the public on Patreon, so you don't have to be a subscriber to get those. The episode, the very first one, will be published everywhere. It'll be on the podcast. Subsequent episodes, you'll have to be a member of the Patreon, but only at the $2 tier to be able to access this RPG that we are so excited to bring you guys.
Go check out some of the artwork. My good friend Kaylee is drawing that stuff. She's hitting it out of the park.
It looks amazing.
It looks
and she's going to be drawing artwork for every episode.
Oh yeah. It's going to be, and some scene from what we come up with is going to be subsequently published, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you're playing a Duros.
Yep.
That's the artwork that's already posted.
Yes.
We are quality checking my character, the KX, opulent looking KX security droid.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to post my story first. We have 2 more characters that you get to see. It's going to be so fun. And the story is going to be off the chart. Well,
yeah.
We don't oversell it. I don't know how the story's going to be.
We don't know anything about the story, but we have a trusted DM that he's been DMing for a while. We have full confidence in his ability to DM.
Yeah.
We're really excited. He's just as big a Star Wars fan as us. We're excited. It's a table packed full of Star Wars fans, and for the most part, longtime RPGers. Colin and I are the RPG noobs at the table. Right. Actually, the other 3 guys, they've been doing it for years. I've done it a couple times, and Colin, this is your first RPG, so it'll be really exciting for us.
And it's one I care about. I don't necessarily care about being a wizard or a barbarian.
Right.
But something that exists in the Star Wars universe is just...
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, exactly. And our story's set around the same time as The Mandalorian, so a fun era to explore. And we're really excited about it. So, guys, please check that out when it comes around. We are going to be hyping it up so much. It should come out relatively soon after our YC3 appearance. We don't have a firm date yet because of the audio editing that it's going to take, and we've got to film it, and we just don't want to promise a date yet. But we're going to have a date and a name whenever we can, as soon as possible. We're really excited about it.
So, yeah, I'm so excited about that. Last piece of little tidbit I want to throw in, Warhammer.station. Search that up on Instagram. If you don't know anything about Warhammer, like I've said previously, Star Wars is about hope. It's about doing what's right for the little guy. Warhammer is not that.
It's not that, no.
It is not that. The little guy is pulp.
Right.
Literally. Right. and so it's a stark contrast to what Star Wars is. Grimdark is the best descriptor of what Warhammer could be. I'm a huge fan of science fiction in general because you got to have balance, right? The light and the dark.
Sure.
Warhammer's the dark,
right?
To an extreme. And so I was spinning up that Instagram page. I'm going to focus mostly on shorts. And you don't have to be on Instagram. They're going to be posted on our Warhammer Station YouTube, Warhammer Station Facebook, Warhammer Station TikTok. I have an avenue to do that. So, and the good thing, one of the best things, just like Star Wars, is there's so much content being put out for this. It changes month to month, if not day to day. And 10th edition, the latest edition of Warhammer 40K is coming out. And so scroll on over to Warhammer Station. We'll post a link on Twitter or something when this thing has its grand opening. And it's also, we also already have the channels on Discord. So engage in that too. It's going to be kicking off. Not only going to stream the Jedi Survivor on Twitch, twitch.tv/Station Media, but we're going to be streaming some Warhammer stuff over there too.
Yep.
So in the future, we're going to have a lot of content being put out, and hopefully we'll give you some heads up on what's being put out on our channel. And a lot is happening. It's so fun. The future is bright.
Yeah. We've got a lot going on over here. We really appreciate our audience. Keep growing with us. Keep joining us. We've got a ton of stuff coming. We've even heard there's rumors that a new Harry Potter TV show might be made, and we have a verbal commitment from a friend. He's going to start a Harry Potter podcast, if that's the case. And so you might have a sister podcast to this soon. No promises on that, but we're excited about it. We have a ton of stuff coming out, guys.
Off podcast, we had some friendly banter about who knows more about Harry Potter, and we had a game, but I took contest to it. We ought to do a Harry Potter with Trivial Pursuit and record that.
Yeah, you'll have to get it started. I'm nowhere near. My wife's never seen Harry Potter. We're watching through them for the first time right now. We just finished The Sorcerer's Stone 2 days ago, so we're slowly coming through it. She's a much bigger Star Wars fan than she is a Potter fan. And, I mean, I've seen some movies dozens of times. I've seen some movies once. And so I don't know if I could fare in that game, but we do need to get that off the ground. But we've got a lot of exciting stuff, guys. We continue to grow. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your listenership. So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back here next week for the Mandalorian's penultimate Season 3 episode. We're also going to be back here on Monday for the coverage of all of the Star Wars Celebration news that we're going to bring you guys. We're really excited about it. So check out our podcast feed, check out our YouTube, all our socials. Stay tuned, and keep it wizard.